The rifle barrel pressed cold against Evelyn's temple as 3 Apache warriors circled her porch. She'd survived 18 months alone on this godforsaken ranch, burying her husband, enduring winters that killed stronger settlers, ignoring the whispers about the fat widow who'd die before spring. Now, watching the war leader dismount with eyes that saw everything she'd tried to hide, Evelyn understood her isolation had finally caught up with her. But when Cole Red River spoke, his words shattered every assumption she'd built around survival. You fight alone long enough. That ends now. What happened next would change the Arizona frontier forever. Stay with me until the end of this story. Hit that like button and drop a comment telling me what city you're watching from, so I can see how far Evelyn's journey travels across the world. The December wind cut through the gaps in Evelyn Harper's cabin walls like accusations. She jammed another strip of cloth into the crack above the window frame, her thick fingers clumsy in the cold. Outside, the Arizona landscape stretched endlessly. Red dirt, scrub brush, and the kind of silence that made you hear your own heartbeat too loud. Damn it! The cloth fell to the floor. Evelyn bent to retrieve it, her back protesting the movement. Everything protested these days, her knees, her shoulders. The ranch itself seemed to be giving up, just like the neighbors expected. She could still hear Martha Yates's voice from last month's supply run. Evelyn, honey, you can't possibly manage that place alone. A woman of your situation needs to be realistic. Situation. That's what they called it now. Not fat, not heavy, just situation. Evelyn picked up the cloth and stuffed it back into the crack. It held this time. Small victories. That's all she had anymore. The ranch had never been much. 200 acres of stubborn earth that fought every seed, a barn that leaked worse than the house, 40 head of cattle that had dwindled to 23 over the past year. Thomas had called it their future when they'd claimed it in '85. 4 years later, Thomas was in the ground behind the barn, and the future looked like a joke nobody found funny. She moved to the stove, stirring the thin soup that would be dinner. Potato, onion, the last of the salt pork. She'd need to make another supply run soon, which meant facing town, facing the stairs, facing Samuel Pritchard at the general store with his careful politeness that somehow felt worse than outright mockery. Mrs. Harper, are you quite certain you can carry all this yourself? Yes, Samuel. Same as last month and the month before. Same as she'd carried water buckets and fence posts and feed sacks and her husband's coffin. The soup bubbled. Evelyn ladled some into a chipped bowl and sat at the table Thomas had built their first week here. Her spoon scraped the bottom. She'd made it too thin again. Didn't matter. There'd be breakfast tomorrow. Probably. Outside, the wind picked up. Evelyn paused mid-bite, listening. The cattle were restless. She could hear them lowing in the distance, an uneasy sound that prickled the back of her neck. Probably just the weather. Storm coming, maybe. She finished her soup and washed the bowl, moving through the evening routine that kept her sane. Routine was survival. Wake up, feed the chickens, check the cattle, repair whatever broke overnight, eat, sleep. Don't think about how it might be easier to just stop. Don't think about Thomas's last words. You'll be fine, Evie. You're stronger than anyone knows. Lies people told when they were dying. Evelyn banked the fire and climbed into bed, pulling the quilts up to her chin. The mattress sagged under her weight. It had always sagged, even when Thomas was alive, but now there was nobody to pretend not to notice. Sleep came hard, like it always did. The wind howled. The cabin creaked. Somewhere in the darkness, a coyote screamed. She was almost asleep when she heard the horses. Evelyn's eyes snapped open. She lay perfectly still, listening. Yes, horses. Multiple horses, moving fast. Her heart began to hammer. Riders didn't come out here. Not anymore. Not since... She threw off the quilts and grabbed her husband's rifle from beside the bed. Her hands shook as she checked the chamber. Loaded. Thomas had taught her to shoot, though she'd never been good at it. Just point and squeeze, Evie. Don't overthink it. The hoofbeats grew louder. Evelyn moved to the window, staying back from the glass. The moon was full enough to see by, painting everything in shades of silver and shadow. 5 riders crested the ridge above her property. Even from a distance, she could see they weren't settlers. They sat their horses differently, moved differently. Apache. The rifle felt heavy in her hands. Everyone knew the stories, the raids, the killings, the women taken and never seen again. But that was supposed to be over. The army had pushed the tribes south, scattered them, broken their resistance. That's what people said in town. People in town lied about a lot of things. The riders split up, circling her property with the precision of men who'd done this before. Evelyn's breathing came short and sharp. She could run. Out the back, into the scrubland, hide in the arroyos until they left. Who was she fooling? She'd make it 20 yards before her lungs gave out. Fight, then. She moved to the door, bracing the rifle against her shoulder the way Thomas had shown her. Her aim had always been terrible, but maybe she'd get lucky. Maybe. The lead rider dismounted 50 yards from her porch. Even in the moonlight, Evelyn could see he was tall, broad-shouldered, moving with the kind of confidence that came from never doubting your right to take up space. He walked toward her cabin like he owned it, like he owned everything. Evelyn's finger tightened on the trigger. She wouldn't go easy. If this was the end, she'd... Evelyn Harper. His voice carried clearly across the distance. He knew her name. How did he know her name? Put down the rifle before you shoot your own foot. The casual authority in his tone sparked something in her chest. Anger, maybe. Or just exhaustion with being told what to do. She kept the rifle up. You're on my property. Leave, or I'll... You'll what? He kept walking. You're shaking so hard you couldn't hit the barn from inside it. Evelyn's cheeks burned. The barrel was wavering. She tried to steady it, but her arms felt like water. The man stopped at the bottom of her porch steps. This close, she could see his face, sharp features, dark eyes that caught the moonlight, a scar running from his temple to his jaw. He looked at her the way people looked at things they were evaluating, measuring worth. She'd seen that look her whole life. I'm not afraid of you, she said. The lie tasted bitter. Yes, you are. He tilted his head slightly. You should be, but not for the reasons you think. What do you want? Lower the rifle. We'll talk. Talk from there. Something that might have been amusement crossed his face. You've got spine. Good. You'll need it. Behind him, the other riders had finished their circuit and were gathering near the barn. Evelyn tried to count them. 4, no, 5, including the one standing on her porch. 5 Apache warriors, and her with one rifle in hands that wouldn't stop shaking. Last chance, the man said. Put it down or I'll take it from you. You'll have to. He moved, fast. One moment he was 3 steps below her, the next he was beside her, his hand closing over the rifle barrel and twisting it away so smoothly she barely felt it leave her grip. Evelyn stumbled backward, hitting the cabin wall. The man examined the rifle, then set it carefully against the porch railing. Empty. What? Evelyn's voice came out strangled. The chamber. You checked it wrong. No bullet. He looked at her with something that might have been pity. You were going to die defending an empty gun. Heat flooded Evelyn's face. Of course. Of course she'd done it wrong. She always did everything wrong. Her hands, her aim, her life. Stop that. She blinked. Stop what? Whatever you're thinking. That look. He gestured vaguely at her face. Like you're already defeated. I hate that look. You don't know anything about me. I know you've survived 18 months alone on a failing ranch. I know your nearest neighbors are 6 miles south and wouldn't piss on you if you were on fire. I know you fixed 3 breaks in your fence line last week despite the cold, and you're rationing food so thin you're probably down to 1 meal a day. He paused. Should I continue? Evelyn's mouth went dry. You've been watching me. For 3 months. The casual admission sent ice through her veins. Why? Because you're alone. Because you're vulnerable. Because I wanted to see if you'd break. He held her gaze. You didn't. So what? You're here to finish the job? Kill the fat widow nobody wants? His expression hardened. Nobody said fat but you. Everyone thinks it. I don't care what everyone thinks, and neither should you. He turned toward the other riders, calling out something in a language Evelyn didn't understand. They dismounted, moving toward the barn. Wait, what are they doing? Checking your property, making sure you're alone. I am alone. I told you. People lie. He looked back at her. You could have a husband hiding in the barn, brothers, sons, an entire militia for all I know. Do I look like I'm hiding a militia? You look like a woman who's been underestimated her entire life. He sat down on the porch steps like he had all the time in the world. Probably useful. People don't watch threats they don't take seriously. Evelyn didn't know what to do with that. She stayed against the wall, her mind racing. She could run now. He'd set down the rifle. He wasn't blocking her path. But where would she go? And why wasn't he threatening her? Raiders didn't sit on your porch making observations about underestimation. What do you want? She asked again. That depends. He pulled out a knife. Evelyn tensed and began cleaning dirt from under his nails like this was a social call. How tired are you of being alone? That's not... What kind of question is that? A simple one. There's nothing simple about any of this. Evelyn's voice rose. You come to my property in the middle of the night, you tell me you've been watching me for months, you ask me about being alone. You're alone because people are cruel. He said it matter-of-factly. Your husband died and the neighbors decided you were a burden. Too heavy, too slow, too much work to help. So they left you out here to fail quietly where they wouldn't have to watch. Stop it. Am I wrong? Yes. No, maybe. Evelyn's chest felt tight. It doesn't matter what you think you know about me. I'm not leaving my property. This is my home. I'm not asking you to leave it. He stood, brushing dust from his pants. I'm asking you to choose. Choose what? One of the riders emerged from the barn, calling out in that unfamiliar language. The man on her porch answered, then looked back at Evelyn. Choose to stop surviving and start living. Choose to be part of something instead of dying alone on land that doesn't care about you. He moved closer. Evelyn pressed harder against the wall, but he stopped just short of crowding her. Choose to see what happens when someone finally sees you as more than the size of your body. I don't understand. You will. He gestured to the riders. Pack what matters, leave the rest. I'm not going anywhere with you. Yes, you are. No threat in his voice, just certainty. Because the alternative is staying here until the winter or the loneliness or the next group of men who aren't as patient as I am finally breaks you. And I didn't watch you survive this long just to watch you give up now. Evelyn's hands clenched into fists. You can't just take me. I can, but I'd rather you came willingly. He held out his hand. My name is Cole Red River. I lead the warriors you see around you. We've been running from the army for 2 years, staying alive in land nobody else wants, and we survive because we take care of each other. No exceptions. I'm not Apache. Neither am I. Not fully. My father was a trapper, white. My mother was Chiricahua. The world doesn't know what to do with people who don't fit in neat boxes. Kept his hand extended. You understand that better than most. Evelyn stared at his hand, calloused, scarred, steady. Behind him, the other warriors were gathering, watching her with expressions that ranged from curious to skeptical. One woman, the only woman among them, looked openly disgusted. What happens if I say no? Evelyn asked quietly. You say no, we leave. You stay here, you keep rationing food, fixing fences, pretending you're fine. Cole's voice softened slightly. And in a few months, someone finds you frozen in your bed, or starved, or worse. And the neighbors shake their heads and say they knew you couldn't make it. They tried to tell you, if only you'd been more realistic. The words hit like physical blows. Because he was right. Evelyn knew he was right. She'd known it for months, deep in the parts of her she didn't examine too closely. If I go with you, she said slowly, what happens then? You work. You contribute. You prove you deserve to be there, same as everyone else. He paused. And you stop apologizing for taking up space. I don't... You apologize with every breath. The way you stand. The way you make yourself small even though you're not small. The way you act like existing is an inconvenience to everyone around you. His eyes bored into hers. I'm tired of watching it. Evelyn's throat closed. Nobody had ever said anything like that to her. Nobody had ever noticed. She looked past Cole to her cabin, the cracked walls, the leaking roof, the empty space where Thomas used to sleep. Everything she'd fought to keep for 18 months, everything that was killing her slowly. What do I pack? The words came out barely above a whisper. Cole's expression didn't change, but something in his posture eased. Clothes, tools, if you have them, anything with sentimental value. He glanced at the cabin. We travel light. Choose carefully. Evelyn nodded slowly. She moved past him into the cabin, her legs feeling disconnected from her body. This was insane. She was leaving with Apache raiders in the middle of the night based on nothing but the word of a man who admitted he'd been watching her like prey. But what was the alternative? Stay here and prove everyone right about her weakness? She pulled her travel bag from under the bed and started packing. 2 dresses. Her heavy coat. Thomas's pocket watch. She couldn't leave that. The small daguerreotype of her parents. Her mother's silver locket. Cole appeared in the doorway watching her. The rifle. You should bring it. I can't shoot. You'll learn. Why do you care if I can shoot? Because where we're going, everyone who can fight, fights. Everyone who can't, learns. He picked up the rifle and held it out to her. No passengers, no charity cases. You pull your weight or you don't belong. Evelyn took the rifle. It felt heavier than before. I've never belonged anywhere. Good. Then you won't have bad habits to break. She finished packing in silence. The cabin looked smaller somehow, seeing it through eyes that knew she might never come back. All those months of fighting to keep it, and in the end, she was walking away in less than an hour. Ready? Cole asked. Evelyn looked around one last time. At the table Thomas built, the quilts her mother had sewn, the life she'd tried so hard to maintain. Yes. Outside, one of the riders had brought a horse for her, a paint mare smaller than the others. Evelyn stared at it, her stomach sinking. I can't. I'm too heavy for... She's bred for endurance, not speed. She'll carry you fine. Cole gestured impatiently. Mount up. Evelyn approached the horse, who eyed her with what looked like equine skepticism. She put her foot in the stirrup and pulled herself up. Graceless, awkward, her weight making the horse shift slightly. Heat burned in her cheeks as she felt the other riders watching. The woman who'd looked disgusted earlier said something sharp in Apache. Cole responded in the same language, his tone leaving no room for argument. The woman's jaw tightened, but she fell silent. What did she say? Evelyn asked. Nothing that matters. Tell me. Cole swung onto his own horse with the fluid ease of someone who'd been riding since childhood. She said I'm making a mistake bringing you, that you'll slow us down, that I'm thinking with something other than my brain. She's probably right. She's probably jealous. He urged his horse forward. Let's move. They rode into the darkness, leaving Evelyn's ranch behind. She looked back once, seeing the cabin shrinking in the moonlight. 18 months of her life, disappearing like it had never mattered. Don't look back. Cole had circled around to ride beside her. It's done. Looking back won't change anything. Easy for you to say. No, it's not. Something in his voice made her glance at him. His face was unreadable in the shadows. But you do it anyway, because forward is the only direction that matters. They rode in silence for what felt like hours. Evelyn's thighs burned from gripping the saddle. Her back ached. Everything ached. But she didn't complain. Cole had said no passengers, no charity cases. She'd proved she could keep up, even if it killed her. The landscape changed as they rode, the flat scrubland giving way to rockier terrain, then hills, then the beginning of mountains. Evelyn had never been this far from her property. She'd never been anywhere, really. Born in Missouri, married at 19, moved to Arizona with Thomas, and stayed put. The world was bigger than she'd imagined. Dawn was breaking when they finally stopped. The other riders dismounted, immediately setting about tasks, tending horses, checking supplies, scanning the horizon. Cole helped Evelyn down from her horse. Her legs nearly buckled when her feet hit the ground. You did well, he said. I barely stayed on. You stayed on. That's what matters. He handed her a water skin. Drink, then rest. We move again in 3 hours. Evelyn drank, the water tasting sweeter than anything she could remember. Her whole body screamed for sleep, but the other riders were still working, setting up a minimal camp. No fires, too visible, Cole explained when she asked. The woman who'd objected to Evelyn's presence walked past, deliberately bumping her shoulder. Evelyn stumbled but caught herself. Naya, Cole's voice cracked like a whip. The woman stopped but didn't turn around. Touch her again, and we'll have a problem. We already have a problem. Naya turned, gesturing at Evelyn with clear disdain. You bring this white woman into our camp. You defend her. You act like she's worth protecting. She is worth protecting. Why? Because she's fat and pathetic and you feel sorry for her? Evelyn flinched. There it was, the thing everyone thought but rarely said to her face. Cole's expression went cold. Because she survived alone while you had 20 warriors watching your back. Because she fixed her own fences while you relied on others. Because she chose to live even when it would have been easier to die. He stepped between Naya and Evelyn. And because I said so. That's enough. Naya's eyes flashed. The others won't accept this. A fat white widow who can't ride, can't fight, can't... Then the others can take it up with me. Cole's hand rested on his knife. You want to challenge my decision? Do it properly. For a long moment, Naya stared at him. Then she spat on the ground and walked away. Evelyn's hands were shaking again. Maybe she's right. Maybe this was a mistake. She's scared. Cole turned to look at her. Change scares people. You're different. You don't fit their expectations, so they'll test you, push you, try to make you break or leave. I'm good at breaking. No. He shook his head. You're good at thinking you should break, but you never do. I watched you for 3 months, remember? I saw you cry exactly twice. Both times you stopped after 5 minutes and got back to work. That's not strength. That's just stubbornness, pride, fear of proving everyone right. He smiled slightly. Call it whatever you want, but you're still standing. That counts. Evelyn didn't know what to say to that. She sat down on a flat rock, her body finally giving in to exhaustion. Cole walked away to confer with the other riders, leaving her alone with her thoughts. What had she done? Left everything she knew to follow strangers into the mountains, put herself at the mercy of people who clearly didn't want her there. Trusted a man who'd been stalking her for months. Thomas would have said she'd lost her mind. But Thomas was dead, and she was alive, and somehow that felt like the first real choice she'd made in years. One of the younger warriors approached her, a boy really, maybe 16. He held out a piece of dried meat. Eat. Evelyn took it. Thank you. He nodded and started to walk away, then paused. Your name? Evelyn Harper. Yes. I am Dakota. He hesitated like he was choosing his words carefully. Cole Red River does not make mistakes. If he brought you, there is a reason. Naya doesn't think so. Naya thinks she should be Cole's woman. She is angry he chooses different. Dakota glanced back at where Cole stood with the other riders. She will make trouble. Be ready. He walked away before Evelyn could respond. She chewed the dried meat, tough, salty, filling, and watched the camp settle into rest. People curled up in bedrolls, using saddles as pillows. No tents, no shelter. Just the open sky and the rocks around them. Evelyn had never slept outside in her life. Cole returned as the sun fully rose. He spread a blanket on the ground near where Evelyn sat. Sleep. We move when the sun's highest. Where are we going? The winter camp, 3 days north. He lay down, his body relaxed but his hand still resting on his knife. Don't worry, we've made this trip before. That's not what I'm worried about. What are you worried about? Everything, Evelyn wanted to say. That she'd made a terrible mistake, that she'd slow them down and get them caught, that Naya was right and she was pathetic, that Cole would realize she wasn't worth the trouble and leave her somewhere to find her own way back, that she'd never be able to go back. Sleep, Cole said again, softer. The worrying doesn't stop, but you can postpone it a few hours. Evelyn lay down on the hard ground, using her bag as a pillow. The earth was cold, uncomfortable. Nothing like her bed back at the ranch. She fell asleep in minutes. When she woke, the sun was directly overhead and the camp was already packing up. Evelyn scrambled to her feet, disoriented. How long had she slept? 3 hours? 4? Here. Dakota appeared beside her with the paint mare. Cole says we ride in 5 minutes. Evelyn's body protested as she mounted. Every muscle she owned ached, but she settled into the saddle and waited, her back straight despite the pain. They rode for hours through increasingly rough terrain. The mountains rose around them, red rock and green scrub pine, the air getting thinner and colder. Evelyn's hands went numb gripping the reins. Her teeth chattered. The coat she'd brought wasn't warm enough. Cole dropped back to ride beside her. You're cold. I'm fine. You're shaking so hard I can hear your teeth from here. He shrugged off the fur-lined jacket he wore and held it out. Take it. You'll freeze. I've survived worse. When she hesitated, he added, Take the jacket, Evelyn. Pride doesn't keep you warm. She took it. The jacket was huge on her, but it was warm, immediately, blissfully warm. It smelled like smoke and leather and something else she couldn't name. Thank you. Cole just nodded and rode ahead. Naya rode past a moment later, her expression venomous. Plain dress-up won't change what you are. What am I? Evelyn asked before she could stop herself. Weak, soft, white. Naya smiled cruelly. Everything we're fighting against. I never fought you. Your people did. Your people killed my brother, my cousins, burned our camps and scattered our families. Naya's smile disappeared. So yes, you did fight us. You just weren't brave enough to hold the gun yourself. She rode ahead, leaving Evelyn with words that felt like stones in her chest. She was right. Evelyn's people had done those things. The settlers, the army, people who looked like Evelyn and talked like Evelyn and believed they had a right to take whatever they wanted. People who would have called Evelyn too fat to be worth raping, but still would have killed her for being in the way. The day wore on. They stopped twice. Once for water, once when one of the horses threw a shoe. Evelyn watched as two of the warriors worked together to replace it, their hands moving with practiced efficiency. Nobody asked if she could help. Nobody expected her to know how. That night, they made camp in a narrow canyon. Still no fire. Cold rations and colder ground. Evelyn sat apart from the others, feeling the weight of their stares and whispers. Cole found her there. Come. Where? Just come. She followed him deeper into the canyon, away from the others. He stopped where a natural outcropping formed a partial shelter from the wind. You'll sleep here tonight, more protected. The others will say you're giving me special treatment. The others can think whatever they want. He started to walk away, then stopped. You asked me why I brought you, why I watched you for 3 months. Yes, because I needed to know if you were real. He turned to look at her. I've seen a lot of people break when they're alone. Men, warriors, people everyone said were strong. They break, and they give up, and they fade away. His eyes held hers. You didn't. Every day you woke up and kept fighting even though you had no reason to, even though you knew you might not make it. That's not special. That's just refusing to die quietly. Cole stepped closer. That's the rarest thing in the world, Evelyn. Most people, you put them in a hard enough place, they'll take the easy way out. Bullet, bottle. Just stop trying. He paused. You never stopped trying. I wanted to. I know. I watched you stand on the edge of that ravine behind your barn. Watched you look down for 10 minutes. His voice was steady. Watched you walk away. Evelyn's breath caught. That day, 4 months ago, when everything felt so heavy she couldn't carry it anymore. When she'd stood there thinking how easy it would be to just step off, how quick it would be. She'd thought she was alone. You were watching me then? I was making sure you weren't alone. Cole looked away. I've seen too many good people die because nobody was there to witness them choosing to live. Something in Evelyn's chest cracked. I don't understand you. You don't have to. But you need to understand this. I don't bring weakness into my camp. I don't carry dead weight. If I brought you here, it's because I see something worth protecting. He met her eyes again. The question is whether you see it too. I can't. Evelyn struggled for words. I can't be what you think I am. You already are. You just haven't admitted it yet. He gestured to the sheltered spot. Sleep. Tomorrow gets harder. He walked away, leaving Evelyn alone with her thoughts and the weight of his words. She settled into the shelter, pulling Cole's jacket tighter around her. It still smelled like him, still held his warmth. For the first time in 18 months, Evelyn Harper fell asleep feeling something other than alone. The next 2 days blurred together. Riding, resting, riding again. Her body adapted slowly, the ache in her thighs lessening, her hands growing steadier on the reins. She started to recognize the rhythm of the camp, who led, who followed, who watched the horizon. Dakota rode with her sometimes, teaching her Apache words: horse, water, sky, thank you. He was patient with her terrible pronunciation, laughing when she butchered particularly difficult sounds.
"You sound like a dying crow," he said cheerfully. "That's encouraging. Better than sounding like nothing at all." Naya continued to radiate hostility, but she kept her distance. The other warriors seemed neutral, watching Evelyn with curiosity but no overt antagonism. One woman, older than the rest, even smiled at her once. Small victories. On the third day, they crested a ridge and Evelyn saw the camp.
It wasn't what she expected. Not teepees or traditional structures, just a collection of rough shelters built into the canyon walls, camouflaged so well she almost missed them. Smoke from hidden fires, the sound of voices, children playing. "Home," Cole said beside her. "For now." They rode down into the canyon. People emerged from the shelters. Women, children, old men. All Apache. All staring at Evelyn like she was something dragged in by accident. Cole dismounted and helped Evelyn down. Her legs nearly gave out, but she caught herself against the horse. "Can you walk?" "Yes." "Then walk. Head up. Don't apologize for being here." Evelyn forced herself to stand straight as Cole led her into the camp. The stares intensified. A child pointed at her, saying something that made his mother scold him sharply. An old woman spat on the ground as they passed. Cole stopped at one of the larger shelters. "This is where you'll stay. You'll share with 3 other women. They'll show you what needs doing." "What if they don't want to share?" "Then they'll tell me, and I'll tell them it doesn't matter what they want." He looked at her seriously. "This won't be easy, Evelyn. People here have lost everything to settlers. Their homes, their families, their entire way of life. You represent that loss." "Then why bring me here?" "Because you also represent something else. Proof that not everyone is defined by the group they're born into. Proof that strength comes in different forms," he paused. "But you'll have to prove it, every day, until they stop seeing you as White Evelyn and start seeing you as just Evelyn." "What if I can't?" "Then you'll leave. But I don't think you will." He turned to go, then looked back. "And Evelyn? That thing you do where you make yourself small? Stop. You're here. Take up your space." He walked away, leaving her standing in front of the shelter. Evelyn took a deep breath and ducked inside. 3 women looked up from their work. One was elderly, her face a map of wrinkles. One was middle-aged, sturdy, and practical-looking. The third was young, maybe 20, with wary eyes. "I'm Evelyn," she said. "Cole said I'd be staying here." The elderly woman said something in Apache. The middle-aged woman responded, then looked at Evelyn. "You speak English?" "Yes." "Good. Makes it easier." She gestured around the shelter. "I am Nady. This is my mother Kaya and my daughter Izusa. Cole says you stay with us, so you stay." "Thank you." "Don't thank yet. You work. You help. You pull weight like everyone else." Nady pointed to a pile of dried hides in the corner. "You know how to tan leather?" "No." "You learn. Sit." Evelyn sat. For the next several hours, Nady taught her the basics of leatherworking, scraping, stretching, treating the hide to make it supple. It was hard physical labor that made Evelyn's hands cramp and her back scream. But she didn't complain. She worked until her fingers bled, until Nady finally said, "Enough. You eat now." They gathered around a small fire outside the shelter. Other families were doing the same, the canyon filling with the smell of cooking meat and root vegetables. Nady handed Evelyn a bowl of stew. "You are Cole's woman?" she asked bluntly. "No, He just brought me here, from my ranch." "Why?" "Good question." "I don't know." Nady studied her. "Cole does not do things without reason. He watches you 3 months, brings you here, gives you his jacket, protects you from Naya." She stirred her stew. "That is not nothing. He said I was stubborn, that I wouldn't give up." Nady didn't look convinced. "Cole lost his woman 2 years ago. Army raid. She was carrying their first child." She spooned stew into her mouth. "He has not looked at a woman since. Until you." Evelyn's stomach twisted. We're not, not yet maybe, but he brought you here. In our way, that means something." Nady glanced at her. "You need to understand. Naya wanted to be Cole's woman, still wants it. She sees you as stealing what should be hers." "I'm not stealing anything. I didn't ask to be here." "Doesn't matter what you asked? Matters what is. Nady set down her bowl. You are a fat white woman in Apache camp. You cannot fight, cannot ride well, cannot speak our language. To people here, you are useless weight. The words should have hurt. Maybe they did. But Evelyn was too tired to care anymore. So what do I do? You prove them wrong, or you leave. Nady shrugged. Your choice? That night, lying on a thin bedroll in the corner of the shelter, Evelyn stared at the darkness and wondered what the hell she was doing. 3 days ago, she'd been alone on her failing ranch. Now she was sleeping in an Apache camp, surrounded by people who hated her, protected by a man she didn't understand, trying to learn skills she'd never needed before. Her whole life had changed in 3 days. And somehow, impossibly, she didn't want to go back. The first week in camp nearly broke her. Evelyn woke before dawn every morning to the sound of Nady stirring the fire. Her body ached in places she didn't know could ache. Shoulders, hips, the small of her back where the bedroll offered no cushioning against the hard ground. But she dragged herself up anyway, because staying in bed meant admitting defeat. Nady put her to work immediately, scraping hides, hauling water from the spring half a mile down the canyon, grinding corn into meal until her arms burned. The work was endless and punishing, and Evelyn understood it was a test. Nady was seeing how long the fat white woman would last before crying or quitting or demanding special treatment. Evelyn refused to give her the satisfaction. You move like old woman, Nady observed on the third morning, watching Evelyn struggle with a water jug. I feel like an old woman. Then move faster. Water does not carry itself. Evelyn bit back a sharp reply and kept walking. Her feet were blistered inside her boots. Her hands were raw from the work. Everything hurt. But she carried the water back to the shelter and poured it into the storage container without spilling a drop. Nady grunted. It might have been approval, hard to tell. The other women in camp watched Evelyn with varying degrees of suspicion. Some ignored her completely. Others made their disdain clear, turning their backs when she approached, speaking rapidly in Apache when she was near, laughing at jokes she couldn't understand but suspected were about her. Naya was the worst. She went out of her way to make Evelyn's life difficult, bumping into her hard enough to make her drop things, standing too close, invading her space with deliberate aggression, making comments in Apache that caused other women to snicker. Ignore her, Nady advised. She is like small dog, all bark. Small dogs still bite, then bite back. But Evelyn didn't know how to bite back. She'd spent her whole life absorbing cruelty, letting it wash over her, pretending it didn't hurt. Fighting back required something she wasn't sure she possessed. Cole was rarely in camp during those first days. He left at dawn with hunting parties, returning after dark with game or news from scouts. When he was there, he watched Evelyn from a distance, checking on her, she realized, but not interfering, testing her independence. On the 5th day, she dropped a full water jug. It shattered on the rocks, water soaking into the thirsty ground. Evelyn stared at the broken pieces, exhaustion and frustration welling up inside her. Stupid, she muttered. Stupid, clumsy. It's a jug. Cole's voice came from behind her. She hadn't heard him approach. We have others. I wasted the water. I wasted the trip down to the spring. You made a mistake. It happens. He crouched beside her, picking up the larger pottery shards. You want to know what I see when I look at you right now? A fat woman who can't even carry water properly? Cole's jaw tightened. I see someone who's been awake since before dawn, who's worked harder today than most of my warriors, who hasn't complained once, even though I know your feet are bleeding in those boots. He stood, holding the broken pieces. I see someone who's still standing. Evelyn's throat felt tight. Why do you care? Because someone should have cared a long time ago. He walked toward the refuse pile. Get another jug. Try again. She did. Her feet screamed with every step down to the spring, but she made the trip 3 more times before the sun set. The last jug she carried back without spilling a single drop, and Nady's grunt of approval felt like a victory. That night, Evelyn sat outside the shelter eating her portion of rabbit stew. Izusa, Nady's daughter, sat nearby working on a beading project. She'd barely spoken to Evelyn all week. Your hands, Izusa said suddenly. They are hurt. Evelyn looked down. Her palms were blistered and raw, some spots bleeding through the dirt. They're fine. No,
They are not fine. Izusa disappeared into the shelter and returned with a small clay pot. This will help. My grandmother makes it.
She knelt beside Evelyn and began applying a thick salve to her damaged hands. It stung, then cooled, then numbed the pain to a dull ache. Evelyn watched the young woman work, her touch gentle and efficient. Thank you, Izusa shrugged. Hands that cannot work are useless. Better to fix them. But there was something softer in her voice, less hostility than Evelyn had heard before. Why are you being kind to me? Because you have not quit yet. Most would have. Izusa finished with the salve and sat back. Naya said you would be gone in 3 days. It has been 5. She is angry about being wrong. She's angry about a lot of things. Yes. But mostly she is angry that Cole looks at you and not her. Izusa returned to her beating. She will challenge you soon. Be ready. Challenge me how? I do not know, but it is coming. The challenge came 2 days later. The camp was preparing for a hunting expedition, a major one, targeting the buffalo herd spotted 2 days north. Everyone was involved, even the children helping pack supplies and prepare weapons. Evelyn worked alongside the other women, trying to be useful without getting in the way. Naya appeared suddenly, blocking her path. The white woman wants to help? Good. Prove you are not useless. Evelyn's stomach sank. What do you want me to do? Come on the hunt. The women around them went quiet. Evelyn felt their eyes on her, waiting. This was the trap. If she refused, she was a coward. If she agreed and failed, which seemed likely, she'd humiliate herself in front of everyone. I don't know how to hunt buffalo. Then you will learn, Naya smiled coldly. Or you will die. Either way, problem solved. That's not, I can't just You can't? Naya's voice rose. Of course you can't. Fat white woman can't do anything except take up space and eat our food. She turned to the watching crowd. Cole Red River brings her here, gives her protection, wastes his time watching her like she is something special. But what has she done? Nothing. She is weak, useless. Something in Evelyn snapped. Maybe it was the exhaustion. Maybe it was years of swallowing insults and pretending they didn't cut. Maybe it was just the fact that she'd carried water and scraped hides and worked until her hands bled, and this woman still saw her as nothing. I'll go. Naya's smile widened. What? I'll go on the hunt. Evelyn's voice was steadier than she felt. When do we leave? Dawn tomorrow. Naya looked disappointed that Evelyn had agreed. She'd wanted refusal, wanted proof of cowardice. Do not slow us down, white woman. Buffalo hunting is not like your soft settler life. She walked away, leaving Evelyn trembling. What had she done? She could barely ride, couldn't shoot, had never hunted anything larger than a chicken, and now she'd committed to chasing buffalo across open terrain with Apache warriors who'd been doing this their entire lives. You are either very brave or very stupid, Nady said behind her. Probably stupid. Yes, probably. Nady handed her a water skin. Drink, then come. I teach you what I can before tomorrow. For the rest of the day, Nady gave Evelyn a crash course in hunting, how to sit low in the saddle, how to read the herd's movement, how to avoid getting trampled or gored, how to stay out of the way if she couldn't help. Most important, Nady said seriously, do not die. Cole will be angry if you die. Cole will be angry or you'll be angry? Both. Nady almost smiled. You are annoying, white woman, but you work hard. I do not want to break in new shelter mate. That evening, Cole found Evelyn checking her horse's tack for the 5th time. Her hands were shaking. You don't have to do this. Yes, I do. No, you don't. He moved closer. Naya set a trap. You walked right into it. Nobody will think less of you for backing out. They already think I'm useless. This won't change that. They'll think you're dead if something goes wrong tomorrow. Cole's voice was hard. Buffalo hunting is dangerous even for experienced riders. You've been on a horse for less than 2 weeks. Then I'll learn fast. Evelyn, stop. She turned to face him. You told me I had to prove myself, that I couldn't be a passenger, that I had to pull my weight or leave. Her chin came up. So I'm proving myself. Cole stared at her for a long moment. You're terrified. Yes.
You might get hurt. You might die. Yes. And you're going anyway. Yes? Evelyn met his eyes. Because if I don't, Naya wins. Everyone who thinks I'm weak and pathetic wins. And I've spent my whole life letting people like that win. Her voice cracked slightly. I'm tired of losing. Something shifted in Cole's expression. Pride, maybe, or concern. Hard to tell. Then at least let me give you a better weapon. That rifle of yours is useless on horseback. He disappeared and returned minutes later with a shorter gun, a carbine, he called it. Lighter, easier to handle while riding. He showed her how to load it, how to aim, how to fire without the recoil knocking her off her horse. You probably won't hit anything, he said bluntly. That's fine, just don't shoot one of us. Encouraging. I'm not here to encourage you. I'm here to keep you alive. He handed her the carbine. Stay near Dakota. He'll watch out for you. And if things go wrong, if the herd turns or you lose control, get out of the way. Your pride isn't worth your life. Cole? Promise me. If it's between your pride and your life, you'll choose life. Evelyn nodded slowly. I promise. Good. He started to leave, then stopped. And Evelyn, when you come back tomorrow, not if when, Naya's going to have to find a different insult, because you won't be useless anymore. The hunting party left before dawn. 15 riders, including Evelyn, Cole leading, Naya riding near the front, with her bow strung and ready. Evelyn stayed in the middle of the group, her heart hammering so hard she thought everyone must hear it. Dakota dropped back to ride beside her. Nervous? Terrified. Good. Fear keeps you careful. Too much confidence gets you killed. He gestured ahead. Stay with me. When we reach the herd, I will tell you what to do. Listen and move fast. They rode for hours across terrain that gradually opened into rolling grassland. Evelyn's thighs burned from gripping the saddle, but she'd learned to roll with the horse's movement, to find a rhythm that didn't fight the animal beneath her. Around mid-morning, Cole raised his hand. Everyone stopped. He pointed to the horizon where Evelyn could just make out dark shapes moving. Buffalo. Hundreds of them. Her mouth went dry. The hunters dismounted, checking weapons and discussing strategy in quick Apache. Evelyn understood maybe one word in 10. Cole approached her. You'll ride on the outside edge of the hunt. Dakota and 2 others will be with you. Your job is to help turn any animals that break from the main group. You won't be chasing the herd directly. Relief flooded through her. A secondary role. Safer. Okay. But if something does head your way, you'll need to act fast. Can you do that? I don't know. Honest. Good. He mounted his horse. Let's go. The hunt began like controlled chaos. The riders spread out, approaching the herd from multiple angles. The buffalo sensed them and began moving, slowly at first, then faster. The thunder of thousands of hooves shook the ground. Evelyn's horse danced nervously. She tightened her grip on the reins, her free hand holding the carbine Cole had given her. Beside her, Dakota was tense but focused, watching the herd's movement. Then the riders charged. The buffalo broke into a full stampede. Dust rose in choking clouds. Evelyn heard yelling, the crack of rifles, the deeper boom of something larger. The herd split, most animals going north, but a group of maybe 20 breaking east, straight toward where Evelyn and her group waited. Now, Dakota shouted. Turn them! Evelyn kicked her horse forward. It leaped into motion, racing parallel to the stampeding buffalo. The animals were massive up close, huge shoulders, wild eyes, hooves that could crush a person without slowing down. Her horse veered closer, responding to her guidance, trying to turn the buffalo back toward the main herd. It was working. The animals began to angle back. But then one large bull broke from the group, charging directly at Evelyn. Too close, moving too fast. Her horse panicked, rearing. Evelyn grabbed for the saddle horn, dropped the carbine, nearly fell. The buffalo was 15 feet away. 10. 5. Dakota appeared from nowhere, his horse slamming into the bull's side, turning it at the last possible second. The buffalo thundered past. Evelyn's horse landed, stumbling. She clung on through pure instinct. You alive? Dakota called. I think so. Then keep moving. They spent the next 20 minutes herding the breakaway group back toward the main hunt. By the time they succeeded, Evelyn's arms felt like jelly, and her heart hadn't stopped racing. But they'd done it. She'd done it. The main hunting party had brought down 3 buffalo.
The riders were already working, butchering the kills with practiced efficiency. Evelyn dismounted on shaking legs and stood there uselessly, not knowing how to help. Nady appeared beside her, handing her a knife. "Come, I show you how to cut properly. This meat feeds camp for weeks. Everyone works." For the next several hours, Evelyn learned how to butcher a buffalo. It was bloody, exhausting work that made her previous ranch chores look easy. But she didn't complain. She cut where Nady told her to cut, carried what needed carrying, stayed out of the way when she didn't know what to do. Naya worked nearby, deliberately ignoring Evelyn's presence. But Evelyn saw her glancing over, saw her expression when she realized the fat white woman hadn't quit or collapsed or embarrassed herself, saw her anger. They loaded the meat onto pack horses and began the journey back to camp. Evelyn rode in a daze of exhaustion, barely able to stay in the saddle. Her clothes were covered in blood and dust. Her hands were cramping. Every muscle in her body screamed. Cole dropped back to ride beside her. "You did well. I almost got trampled. But you didn't. You stayed on your horse. You helped turn the breakaways. You worked the butchering without being asked." He paused. "You proved you belong here." "Did I?" Evelyn looked at him. "Or did I just prove I'm stubborn?" "Sometimes they're the same thing." They rode in silence for a while. Then Cole said quietly, "Thank you." "For what?" "For not dying. I wasn't sure you'd make it through today." His jaw was tight. "It would have been my fault if something happened to you." "Nothing happened. This time." He looked at her seriously. "But Evelyn, you can't keep taking these risks just to prove people wrong. Eventually your luck will run out." "What else am I supposed to do? Let them think I'm useless?" "Let them think whatever they want. You know what you're capable of. That should be enough." "It's not enough," Evelyn said. "It's never been enough. People like me, we don't get to just exist. We have to justify taking up space. We have to prove we deserve to be here." Her voice was rough. "You of all people should understand that." Cole was quiet for a long time. Then he said, "Yes, I do understand." He urged his horse forward, but understanding it doesn't make it right. They reached camp after dark. Word of the successful hunt had preceded them, and people were celebrating, small fires, music, laughter. Evelyn helped unload the meat, working until Nady physically pushed her toward the shelter. "You sleep now, or you fall down and I have to drag you." Evelyn didn't argue. She collapsed onto her bedroll and was asleep in seconds. She woke to voices arguing outside the shelter. Nady and someone else, a man, speaking angry Apache. Evelyn sat up, disoriented. The argument grew louder. Azusa appeared in the shelter entrance. "Stay here. Do not come out." "What's happening?" "Naya's brother. He is angry about the hunt, about you." Azusa looked worried. "Stay here." But Evelyn could hear Cole's voice now, sharp and commanding. She crawled to the entrance and peered out. A warrior she didn't recognize was gesturing at Cole, his face twisted with rage. Naya stood behind him, arms crossed. Half the camp had gathered to watch. "What are they saying?" Evelyn whispered to Azusa. "He says you should not have been allowed on the hunt. Says you put everyone in danger. Says Cole is weak for protecting you." Azusa's voice dropped. "He is challenging Cole's leadership." Evelyn's stomach dropped. This was because of her. This fight was because Cole had brought her here. The warrior said something else, loud enough that the watching crowd reacted with gasps and murmurs. Cole went very still. "What did he say?" Azusa hesitated. "He called you Cole's fat white whore. Said Cole thinks with his cock instead of his brain." Before Evelyn could react, Cole moved, fast. He had the warrior on the ground in seconds, knife at his throat. The crowd went silent. Cole said something in Apache, calm, controlled, deadly. The warrior beneath him went pale. Nobody moved. Then Cole stood, offering his hand to the man. The warrior took it, getting to his feet. He said something that sounded like an apology, then walked away. The crowd began to disperse. Cole turned, saw Evelyn in the shelter entrance. Their eyes met across the space. Then he walked away into the darkness. Evelyn retreated into the shelter, her hand shaking. Nady entered a moment later. "What was that?" Evelyn asked. "A lesson." Nady sat down heavily. "Man named Kuruk. Good warrior, strong, but stupid tonight.
She looked at Evelyn. He challenged Cole. Cole could have killed him, should have killed him, by rights. But Cole gave him mercy, gave him chance to apologize and keep his honor. Why?
Because Cole is good leader, strong when strength is needed, merciful when mercy is possible. Nady stirred the small fire. But now everyone knows. Anyone who insults you insults Cole. Anyone who threatens you threatens him. She met Evelyn's eyes. That is dangerous for you both. I didn't ask for that. Doesn't matter, it is done. Nady pulled out her sleeping furs. You wanted to prove you belong here? You are proving it, but belonging comes with price. Now everyone watches you, judges you, wonders what makes fat white woman worth protecting. I'm not worth... Stop! Nady's voice was sharp. I'm tired of hearing you say that. You work hard. You do not complain. You went on hunt even though you were terrified. You are not useless. She lay down. But you need to start believing that, because if you do not believe it, no one else will either. Evelyn lay awake long after the others slept, thinking about Nady's words, about Cole holding a knife to a man's throat because of an insult, about the way everyone looked at her now, not just with suspicion, but with fear of what her presence meant. She'd wanted to prove herself, to show she could survive here, but she hadn't considered what that proof might cost. The next few days were strange. People who'd ignored her before now acknowledged her, not warmly, but with grudging recognition. She'd been on a hunt. She'd worked butchering. She hadn't collapsed or run away crying. That meant something, but it also meant more eyes watching her, more pressure, more expectations. Dakota found her 3 days after the hunt, carrying her usual load of water jugs. Cole wants to see you. Evelyn's heart jumped. She hadn't spoken to Cole since the confrontation with Kuruk. Where? The Overlook. I will show you. He led her to the eastern edge of camp where a rock shelf jutted out over the canyon. Cole stood there alone, looking at the horizon. He didn't turn when they approached. Leave us, he said to Dakota. The boy disappeared. Evelyn waited, unsure what to say. Cole finally looked at her. You're angry with me. It wasn't a question. Evelyn considered lying, then didn't. Yes. Because I defended you. Because you risked your position for me. Because you made me a target. Because now everyone thinks... She stopped. Thinks what? That there's something between us. That I'm your woman. That you're protecting me for reasons that have nothing to do with whether I'm actually useful. The words came out bitter. They think I'm sleeping with you for protection. And that bothers you. Of course it bothers me. I've spent my whole life having people assume the worst about me. Assume I'm lazy because I'm fat. Assume I'm weak. Assume I have nothing to offer except taking up space. Her voice rose. And now I'm here trying to prove I'm more than that. And everyone thinks the only reason I'm still here is because I'm warming your bed. Are you finished? No. You said I had to prove myself, that I couldn't be a passenger. But how am I supposed to prove anything when you... Evelyn's throat closed. When you make it impossible for people to see me as anything except yours. Cole was quiet for a long moment. You're right. Evelyn blinked. What? You're right. I made this harder for you. He turned to face her fully. I should have been more careful. Should have let you fight your own battles instead of stepping in. Should have known that defending you would make people think exactly what they're thinking. Then why did you do it? Because I couldn't watch them destroy you. The admission came out rough. I've seen what happens when the group decides someone doesn't belong. They tear that person apart piece by piece until there's nothing left. And I couldn't... He stopped, jaw working. I couldn't watch that happen to you. Why not? You barely know me. Because I do know you. I watched you for 3 months, remember? I know how you fight even when you have no reason to. How you survive even when everyone says you won't. How you stand back up every time life knocks you down. He met her eyes. And I know what it's like to be the person everyone thinks doesn't belong. Evelyn's anger deflated slightly. Your father was white. Yes. Which meant the Apache didn't fully trust me, and the whites wanted to kill me. I've spent my whole life proving I deserve to lead. Proving I'm strong enough, smart enough, Apache enough. His voice was hard. So yes, I know what you're going through.
And I know you can't prove yourself if I keep fighting your battles. Then stop fighting them. I will, but understand, if someone truly threatens you, if someone tries to hurt you, I will step in. That's not negotiable. He looked away. I've lost too many people I care about to stand by and watch it happen again. The admission hung in the air between them. Evelyn didn't know what to say, how to respond to hearing that Cole Red Driver, the feared Apache war leader, cared about whether she lived or died. I can't be your woman, she said quietly. People already think I am. If there was actually something between us, it would destroy any credibility I've built. I know. So we need to maintain distance. No more special treatment. No more defending me when people say cruel things. I handle it myself. I understand. Good. Evelyn started to leave, then turned back. And Cole? Thank you. For everything you've done, for bringing me here, for believing I could survive. Her voice cracked slightly. For seeing me as more than just a fat widow nobody wants. I never saw you as that. Cole's expression was unreadable. From the first moment I watched you, I saw strength. I saw resilience. I saw someone who refused to break even when breaking would have been easier. He paused. I saw someone worth knowing. Evelyn's eyes burned. She turned and walked away before he could see her cry. That night, lying in the shelter, she thought about everything that had happened since she'd left her ranch. The exhaustion, the work, the constant judgment, the fear and anger and moments of unexpected kindness. The way Cole looked at her like she was something more than her body. For the first time in years, Evelyn Harper felt like she might actually be worth something. And for the first time in her life, she was terrified of what that might mean. The distance Evelyn tried to maintain lasted exactly 4 days. On the 5th morning, she woke to urgent voices and the sound of horses being saddled in haste. She emerged from the shelter to find the camp in controlled chaos, warriors checking weapons, women packing supplies, children being gathered and quieted. Nady was already rolling their belongings into tight bundles. We move. Now! What's happening? Army patrol 2 days south and moving this direction. Nady thrust a pack at Evelyn. Take this. Carry what you can. Leave the rest. Evelyn's hands moved automatically, stuffing her few possessions into the pack. Around her, the camp was being dismantled with frightening efficiency. Shelters collapsed, fires extinguished. Within 20 minutes, there was barely any evidence people had lived here at all. Cole rode through camp on his black stallion, calling out orders. His face was grim. When he saw Evelyn, he stopped. Can you ride hard for several hours? I don't know. That's not good enough. Yes or no? Evelyn thought about her aching legs, her inexperience, the fear already tightening her chest. Then she thought about what happened to Apache caught by army patrols. Yes. Good. Stay with Nady's group. Don't fall behind. He started to ride away, then looked back. And Evelyn? If shooting starts, get low and stay low. You're not a warrior. Don't pretend to be one. They rode north into rougher country, moving fast but not panicked. The children were distributed among the stronger riders, some crying softly, others silent with the kind of fear that came from having fled before. Evelyn clung to her horse, focusing on staying in the saddle as the terrain grew more treacherous. They stopped once to water the horses at a narrow stream. Evelyn dismounted on shaking legs and immediately sat down hard on a rock. Her thighs were screaming. Her back felt like someone had driven stakes into it. Dakota appeared with a water skin. Drink fast. We move again soon. How far are we going? As far as we need to. He looked back the way they'd come. The army is hunting us. They have been hunting us for 2 years. Sometimes we lose them for weeks. Sometimes they find us again. His young face was old with exhaustion. It never ends. They mounted up and kept moving. The sun climbed higher, beating down mercilessly. Evelyn's vision started to blur at the edges. She grabbed the saddle horn and held on, willing herself not to fall. Beside her, Nady's face was set in hard lines. You fall, you die. So don't fall. Helpful advice. It is only advice you need right now. By late afternoon, they reached a series of canyons that cut through the mountains like wounds. Cole led them into the narrowest one, the walls rising sheer on both sides. Evelyn looked up at the thin strip of sky and felt her chest tighten. If the army found them here, they'd be trapped. This is defensible, Nady said, seeing her expression. Only one way in. Hard to attack. Also, only one way out. Yes, that is the risk. They made camp in a wider section of the canyon. No fires again. Cold food and colder comfort. The children were subdued, the adults tense. Evelyn helped Nady set up their minimal shelter, her hands clumsy with fatigue. How often does this happen? She asked quietly. The running. Often enough. Nady didn't look at her. We are free Apache. The army wants us on reservations. Dead, disappeared. Does not matter which. She tied off a rope. So we run. We hide. We survive how we can. That night, Cole called a meeting of the warriors. Evelyn watched from a distance as they gathered in a tight circle, voices low and urgent. She couldn't hear what was being said, but the body language was clear. Disagreement, argument, fear. Kuruk, the warrior who'd challenged Cole before, was gesturing angrily. Others were shaking their heads. Naya stood with her arms crossed, her expression triumphant. The meeting broke up with nothing resolved. The warriors dispersed, some going to check the canyon entrance, others settling near their families. Cole stood alone for a moment, his shoulders tight with tension. Evelyn knew she should stay away, keep the distance she'd insisted on, but her feet moved before her brain caught up, carrying her to where he stood. Bad meeting? Cole turned. For a moment she thought he'd tell her to leave. Then his shoulders sagged slightly. They want to split up. Take smaller groups. Move separately. Think it's safer. Is it? Maybe. But splitting up means losing strength in numbers. Means if one group gets caught, the others might not know until it's too late. He rubbed his face. And it means the end of us as a band, as a people. What do you want to do? I want to stop running. I want to find a place where we can live without constantly looking over our shoulders. I want... He stopped. It doesn't matter what I want. What matters is keeping these people alive. Evelyn looked at the camp, the exhausted families, the frightened children, the warriors who'd been fighting for so long they'd forgotten what peace looked like. They trust you. Some do. Others think I'm leading them to destruction. His voice was bitter. Kuruk isn't wrong to question me. I brought you here, and now the army's closer than they've been in months. Maybe that's not coincidence. You think someone saw us? At my ranch? I think you were alone for 18 months and nobody cared. Then I take you and suddenly there's an army patrol in the area? Cole's jaw tightened. Yeah, I think someone noticed. Guilt twisted in Evelyn's stomach. This is my fault. No, it's the army's fault for hunting people who just want to be left alone. It's the government's fault for breaking every treaty they ever signed. It's the fault of everyone who decided Apache lives don't matter. He looked at her. But it's not your fault for existing. Cole, go rest, Evelyn. Tomorrow might be worse. She wanted to argue, wanted to say something that would ease the weight pressing down on him. But she had no words that would fix this, so she walked away and left him standing alone in the darkness. The next 2 days passed in tense waiting. Scouts reported the army patrol had passed south of their position, but was circling back, searching. The canyon felt more like a trap with every hour. Tempers grew short, arguments broke out over small things, food distribution, water rationing, whose children were making too much noise. Evelyn tried to make herself useful without getting in the way. She hauled water, helped prepare food, watched the younger children while their parents worked. But she could feel the resentment building, the whispers that followed her, the looks that said she didn't belong here, shouldn't be here, was the reason everything was falling apart. On the third morning, Naya confronted her openly. You should leave. The Apache woman's voice was flat. Go back to your settler friends. Tell them where we are. Finish what you started. Evelyn was grinding corn, her hands already raw from the work. I didn't start anything. You exist. That is enough. Naya moved closer. You think Cole protects you because you are special? You think you matter to him? I don't think anything. I'm just trying to survive. Then survive somewhere else, because while you're here, you make us all targets. That's not fair. Fair? Naya's laugh was sharp. You want to talk about fair? My brother died in an army raid. My mother died on the Trail of Tears before I was born. My entire village was burned because settlers wanted our land. She leaned in close. Do not talk to me about fair, white woman. Evelyn's throat was tight. I'm sorry for what happened to you, to your family, but I didn't do those things. Your people did. They're not my people. They never were. The words came out harder than Evelyn intended. You think settlers welcome me? Think they treated me kindly? I was the fat widow they mocked, the burden they wanted gone, the woman they left alone to die because helping me wasn't convenient. Her voice rose. So don't stand there and tell me about my people like I belong with them. I never belonged anywhere until I came here.
Naya stared at her. For a moment, something like understanding flickered in her eyes. Then it was gone, replaced by cold anger. You still do not belong here. She walked away. Evelyn went back to grinding corn, her hands shaking. Around her, several women had stopped working to watch the confrontation. Their expressions ranged from hostile to thoughtful to carefully neutral. Nady appeared at her elbow. That was stupid. Which part?
All of it. Fighting with Naya, raising your voice, making people choose sides. Nady took over the grinding, her movements sharp. You are supposed to be proving you can fit in here, not making everyone angry. She started it, and you finished it, badly. Nady glanced at her. Naya lost family to settlers, lost her brother to army bullets just 6 months ago. You're a walking reminder of everyone who hurt her. Of course she hates you.
So what am I supposed to do? Apologize for being white? No, but maybe try understanding why she feels how she feels. Nady's voice softened slightly. You want people to see past your body, yes? To see you as more than fat white woman? Then you must see past Naya's anger, see the pain underneath. Evelyn sat back, the fight draining out of her. I don't know how to do that.
None of us do. We all just try.
Nady handed her the grinding stone. Now finish this, and stay away from Naya. Next time she might do more than talk. That afternoon, everything went to hell. The scouts came back at a dead run, their horses lathered with sweat. Army patrol, less than 2 miles out, moving directly toward the canyon. The camp erupted into controlled panic. Women grabbed children. Warriors armed themselves. Cole was everywhere at once, calling orders, directing people, his voice cutting through the chaos. Women and children to the back of the canyon. Warriors at the entrance. Move! Evelyn helped Nady gather their things, her heart hammering. This was real. This was happening. The army was coming, and there was nowhere to run. Take Izusa and the children, Nady said, thrusting her daughter toward Evelyn. Go deep into the canyon. Hide. Do not come out no matter what you hear. What about you? I fight. Nady picked up a rifle. I am old, but I can still shoot. Now go. Evelyn grabbed Izusa's hand and ran. Around her, other women were doing the same, herding children deeper into the canyon where the walls narrowed and the shadows grew thick. Someone had found a cave-like overhang. They crowded inside, mothers pressing hands over crying children's mouths, everyone silent and terrified. Evelyn held 3 small children who'd been separated from their mothers. They clung to her, trembling. She wrapped her arms around them and tried to project a calm she didn't feel. From the canyon entrance came the sound of horses, shouting, then gunfire. The children flinched with every shot. Evelyn closed her eyes and prayed to nothing in particular that this would end without everyone she'd come to care about dying. The battle was short and brutal. The narrow canyon entrance was exactly as defensible as Nady had said. Only a few soldiers could enter at a time, and the Apache warriors picked them off with devastating efficiency. But the army kept coming, wave after wave, and Evelyn could hear the Apache fire slowing, running low on ammunition, running out of time. Then someone screamed, a woman's voice, high and terrified. Evelyn's eyes snapped open. That came from behind them, from deeper in the canyon. Before she could react, Izusa grabbed her arm. The river! Someone fell in the river! There was a river. Evelyn hadn't seen, but yes, she could hear it now. The sound of rushing water somewhere in the darkness, and over it, the screaming. Stay here, Evelyn said to the other women. She ran toward the sound, Izusa right behind her. The canyon walls narrowed until they were stumbling through near darkness, following the sound of water and screaming. They emerged at the riverbank, and Evelyn's stomach dropped. The spring runoff had turned the normally calm stream into a raging torrent. And in the middle of it, a woman was fighting to keep her baby's head above water. Help! The woman screamed. Someone help! The other Apache women who'd followed arrived at the riverbank. They stared at the water, frozen. None of them could swim, or if they could, they knew that current would kill them in seconds. Evelyn didn't think. She just moved. She kicked off her boots and waded into the freezing water. The current grabbed her immediately, trying to sweep her away. She dug her feet into the rocky bottom and pushed forward. 1 step, 2. The water reached her waist, then her chest. "Evelyn, no!" Izusa shouted from the bank. "You will die!" Probably. The water was so cold it felt like knives. Evelyn couldn't feel her legs. Couldn't feel anything except the desperate need to reach that mother and child before they went under. 5 more steps. The current was crushing, trying to knock her over. She grabbed for a rock, missed, went under. Water filled her mouth, her nose. She surfaced gasping, grabbed again, this time catching a boulder, used it to pull herself forward. The mother was 3 feet away, 2. Evelyn reached out, grabbed the woman's arm. "I've got you!" The mother's eyes were wild with terror. She thrust her baby at Evelyn. "Take him, please!" Evelyn grabbed the infant. A boy, maybe 6 months old, his face blue with cold. She tucked him against her chest with one arm, used the other to start pulling herself back toward shore. But the current was stronger now, and she was tired. So tired. Her feet slipped. She went under again, protecting the baby's head instinctively. When she surfaced, she'd lost her grip on the rocks. The current had her, was carrying her downstream. She heard shouting, saw movement on the bank. Then something hit the water beside her, a rope. She grabbed for it with her free hand, caught it, held on with everything she had. People on the shore were pulling. Slowly, agonizingly, Evelyn and the baby moved toward the bank. The current fought them every inch, but there were strong hands now, reaching down, grabbing her arms, hauling her out of the water. She collapsed on the rocks, still clutching the baby. Someone took him from her, the mother, sobbing, pressing the crying infant to her chest. Around them, women were talking rapidly in Apache, their voices high with shock and relief. Evelyn lay there, unable to move. She was so cold, couldn't stop shaking, couldn't feel her hands or feet. Then Cole was there, kneeling beside her, his face white with rage and fear. "What the hell were you thinking?" "Baby," Evelyn managed through chattering teeth. "In the water. You could have died." "Didn't." "You—" Cole stopped, pressing his hands to his face. When he looked at her again, something had changed in his expression. "You stupid, stubborn, impossible woman." He pulled her into his arms. Evelyn was too cold and exhausted to protest. She just leaned against him and shook. Around them, the gunfire at the canyon entrance had stopped. An eerie silence fell. One of the warriors came running back, calling out in Apache. Cole responded without letting go of Evelyn. "What happened?" she asked. "They're pulling back, the army. They're leaving." "Why?" "I don't know. Maybe they ran out of ammunition. Maybe they decided we weren't worth the casualties." He looked down at her. "Or maybe they just wanted to scare us. Show us they can find us whenever they want." He helped Evelyn stand. Her legs nearly buckled, but he held her steady. They walked back to the main camp together, Evelyn leaving wet footprints on the stone. The camp was devastated, not from physical damage. The army hadn't gotten that far. But from fear. From the knowledge that they'd been found again. That nowhere was safe. The mother whose baby Evelyn had saved approached them. She was young, maybe 20, with tears streaming down her face. She said something in Apache, long, emotional, her hands gesturing. Cole translated quietly. "She says she owes you her son's life, that you risked everything for someone you don't even know, that she will never forget this." The woman pressed something into Evelyn's hands, a small carved wooden figure, worn smooth from handling. Then she turned and walked away, still crying, her baby clutched against her chest. Evelyn looked down at the carving. A bear, standing on its hind legs. "It was her brother's," Cole said softly. "The one who died in the raid. It's probably the most valuable thing she owns." Evelyn's throat closed. She tried to hand it back, but the woman was already gone, disappeared into the crowd. That night, the mood in camp was strange. The warriors who'd survived the brief battle were checking wounds and repairing weapons. The women were tending to injuries, 3 men hurt, 1 seriously. But people kept looking at Evelyn differently now. She'd saved one of their own, risked her life without hesitation, done something brave and stupid and utterly reckless. Done exactly what any of them would have done. Nadie appeared with dry clothes and a blanket. You are still shaking. Can't stop. You nearly died today. Shaking is normal. Nadie wrapped the blanket around her shoulders. Also, you are very stupid. Everyone keeps saying that because it is true. But Nadie's voice was gentle. Stupid and brave are often the same thing. Across the camp, Naya was watching. Evelyn met her eyes, expecting more hatred. But Naya's expression was complicated now, conflicted. She turned away without saying anything. Cole found Evelyn later, after the injured had been tended and the camp had settled into uneasy rest. He sat down beside her without asking permission. How are you feeling? Like I jumped into a freezing river. Fair. He was quiet for a moment. What you did today? That was the bravest thing I've ever seen, and the stupidest. Also fair. You could have died, Evelyn. That current could have swept you away, and we never would have found your body. His voice was rough. Do you understand that? Yes. Then why did you do it? Evelyn thought about it, about that moment on the riverbank when she'd had to choose between safety and action, between standing back and stepping forward. Because that baby didn't deserve to die, and because I'm tired of watching bad things happen and doing nothing. That's not your responsibility. Maybe not, but it's who I want to be. She looked at him. You said I had to prove I belong here, that I couldn't be a passenger. Well, passengers don't jump in rivers to save drowning babies. People who belong do. Cole stared at her for a long moment. Then, slowly, he started to laugh. It was a rough, exhausted sound, but genuine. You're right. You're absolutely right. About what? You do belong here. He stood, offering her his hand. Oh, come on, there's something you need to see. He led her through the camp to where the warriors were gathering. As Evelyn approached, they turned to look at her. Karuk was there. Dakota. Even Naya, standing at the edge of the group. Cole said something in Apache. The warriors responded in unison, their voices raised. Then they did something that made Evelyn's breath catch. They struck their chests with their fists, once, twice, 3 times. A salute, a sign of respect. What did you say to them? Evelyn whispered. I told them that today they saw what true courage looks like, that you proved anyone willing to fight for this family deserves to be part of it. Cole's voice was steady, and that from now on, anyone who insults you insults all of us. Evelyn's eyes burned. She blinked rapidly, refusing to cry in front of everyone. The warriors began to disperse, some nodding to her as they passed. Even Naya paused, her expression unreadable, before walking away. Only Kuruk remained. He approached Evelyn slowly, his scarred face serious. He said something in Apache, too fast for her to catch any words. He apologizes, Cole translated, for questioning your presence here, for calling you weak. He says any woman brave enough to face that river is a warrior in her own right. Karuk held out his hand. Evelyn took it, his grip strong and calloused. He nodded once, then walked away. Evelyn stood there trembling, and this time it had nothing to do with the cold. Everything she'd wanted, acceptance, belonging, proof that she was more than people assumed, had just been given to her. Not through words or promises, but through action, through choosing to save a child when nobody else could. Thank you, she said to Cole. Don't thank me, you did this yourself. He started to leave, then turned back. Evelyn, that distance you wanted between us, the separation to prove you earned your place here? Yes? I think you've earned it. I think everyone here knows you're not just someone I'm protecting. You're someone who belongs. He held her gaze. Which means if there was something between us, hypothetically, it wouldn't undermine what you've built. It would just be the truth. He walked away before she could respond, leaving her standing alone in the darkness, with her heart doing complicated things in her chest. That night, wrapped in dry blankets in the shelter, Evelyn finally allowed herself to think about what Cole had said, about what it might mean, about the way he'd held her when she came out of the river, like losing her would have destroyed something in him, about the way she'd felt in his arms, not judged or pitied or tolerated, but wanted. She fell asleep holding the carved bear the grateful mother had given her, and for the first time since leaving her ranch, Evelyn Harper allowed herself to hope that maybe, just maybe, she'd found something worth holding on to. The next morning brought news that changed everything. The scouts reported the Army patrol had left the area completely, heading east, but they'd also found something else. Smoke signals from another Apache band, 3 days north. A message. A warning. Cole called another council. This time, Evelyn was included. She sat at the edge of the circle, still not quite believing she was there, while the warriors discussed their options in a mix of Apache and English. The northern band says there's a place, Cole translated for Evelyn's benefit. A valley across the border, remote, defensible, where Apache from different bands are gathering, trying to build something permanent. Permanent how? Kuruk asked. Army doesn't respect borders. They'll follow us there too. Maybe, but the land is rougher, harder to patrol, and if enough of us gather, we might be strong enough to defend it. Cole looked around the circle. Or we keep running until we're too scattered and weak to survive. The discussion went on for hours. Some warriors wanted to go, others thought it was a trap or a fantasy. Naya remained silent, her eyes on Cole the entire time. Finally, Cole stood. We vote. Those who want to try for the valley, say so now. More than half the warriors agreed. The others reluctantly went along. They would move north, slowly, carefully, scouting the way ahead. It would take weeks, maybe months, and there was no guarantee the valley would be what they hoped. But it was hope. And hope was in short supply. As the meeting broke up, Naya approached Cole. Evelyn started to leave, but Cole gestured for her to stay. You're making a mistake, Naya said. This valley is a dream. We should split up, disappear into small groups, survive however we can. And lose everything that makes us Apache? Cole shook his head. No, we stay together. We find a place to make a stand. We'll die. Maybe. But we'll die as a people, not as scattered fragments of what we used to be. He met her eyes steadily. I know you disagree. I know you wanted a different path. But this is the choice I'm making as leader. You can follow or you can leave. Those are the only options. Naya's jaw tightened. For a moment, Evelyn thought she might actually leave. Then she said, I follow. But when this fails, remember I warned you. She walked away, her back rigid with anger. Cole sighed. She's not wrong to be afraid. Are you afraid? Evelyn asked. Terrified, but being afraid and doing the right thing aren't mutually exclusive. He looked at her. You taught me that. Jumping into that river when you knew you might die. That was stupid, remember? Stupid and brave are often the same thing. He smiled slightly. Someone wise told me that once. They stood there in comfortable silence, watching the camp prepare for another journey, another uncertain future. But this time, Evelyn wasn't watching from the outside. She was part of it, part of the decision, part of the family. And when Cole's hand brushed against hers, accidental or intentional, she wasn't sure, she didn't pull away. They moved north 3 days later, the entire camp traveling in a loose caravan that stretched across the high desert. Evelyn rode near the middle now, accepted enough that nobody questioned her presence. The women talked around her in a mixture of Apache and broken English, sometimes including her in the conversation, sometimes forgetting she was there. Both felt like progress. The journey was brutal. They moved mostly at night to avoid army patrols, sleeping in whatever shelter they could find during the day. Water was scarce. Food was scarcer. 2 of the older people died in the first week, one from fever, one simply from exhaustion. They buried them in shallow graves marked with stones and kept moving. Evelyn watched Cole carry the weight of every loss. He barely slept, constantly circling the camp on watch, checking on families, settling disputes. The strain showed in the lines deepening around his eyes, the way his shoulders never fully relaxed. On the 8th night, she found him sitting alone on a ridge overlooking their camp. She climbed up without asking permission and sat beside him. You should be resting, he said without looking at her. So should you. I'll rest when everyone's safe. That's not a sustainable plan. Evelyn pulled her blanket tighter against the cold. You can't protect everyone all the time, Cole. I can try. And you'll kill yourself trying. Then who leads? She glanced at him. Kuruk? He's strong, but he's not you. The camp would fracture in days. Cole was quiet for a long time. Then he said, I lost them before. My wife. My unborn child. I was away scouting when the soldiers came. If I'd been there, you'd probably be dead too. Maybe. But at least I would have died trying to protect them. His voice was raw. Instead, I came back to find our shelter burned and her body in the ashes, and everyone looking at me like I'd failed them, like I should have known, should have been there. Evelyn's chest ached. She wanted to say something comforting, something that would ease that pain, but there were no words for that kind of loss. So instead, she reached over and took his hand. He tensed, then his fingers closed around hers, tight, almost desperate. "You can't carry that forever," she said quietly. "I don't know how to put it down. You start by accepting you're human, that you can't be everywhere at once, that sometimes terrible things happen and there's nothing you could have done to stop them." She squeezed his hand. "And you start by letting someone else help carry the weight instead of bearing it all alone." Cole looked at their joined hands. "Is that what you're offering, to help carry it?" "If you'll let me." He raised her hand to his lips and kissed her knuckles, a gesture so unexpected and gentle that Evelyn's breath caught. When he looked at her, the walls he kept up were gone. She saw exhaustion and grief and something else, something that made her heart stutter. "I don't deserve you," he said. "That's the stupidest thing I've ever heard you say, and I've heard you say some stupid things." He laughed, actually laughed, the sound rough but real. "How do you do that?" "Do what?" "Make everything feel less impossible." "I don't. I just remind you that impossible things happen every day. Like a fat widow surviving in an Apache camp. Like finding someone who sees you instead of just looking at you." She paused. "Like falling for someone you never expected to fall for." The words hung between them. Cole went very still. "Evelyn, don't tell me all the reasons it's complicated. I know it's complicated. I know people will talk. I know Naya will probably try to kill me." She met his eyes. "But I'm tired of pretending I don't feel something when you're near. Tired of keeping distance when all I want is to be closer." Cole pulled her against him, his arms wrapping around her like he'd been waiting for permission. Evelyn pressed her face into his chest, breathing in smoke and leather and safety. For the first time in months, maybe years, she felt like she could stop fighting, stop proving, stop surviving, and just be. "This is a terrible idea," Cole murmured into her hair. "Probably. People will say I'm taking advantage, that you're vulnerable, and I'm using that. People say a lot of things. Most of it's wrong." He pulled back enough to look at her face. Then, slowly, carefully, he kissed her. It was gentle at first, tentative, like he was afraid she might break or disappear. Evelyn kissed him back harder, her hands fisting in his shirt, showing him she was neither breakable nor temporary. When they finally separated, both breathing hard, Cole pressed his forehead to hers. "This changes everything." "I know. If we do this, if we're together, it can't be casual. It can't be something we hide or apologize for. It has to be real, permanent." "I don't do casual," Evelyn said. "Never have." "Good. Neither do I." He kissed her again, deeper this time. "Stay with me tonight, not in your shelter. Here. People will know. Let them know. I'm done hiding how I feel about you." They lay down together on the hard ground, wrapped in blankets and each other. Evelyn fit against Cole's body like she belonged there, her head on his chest, his arms holding her secure. Above them, stars wheeled across the sky in patterns Evelyn had never learned to read. "Tell me about her," she said quietly. "Your wife." Cole was silent so long she thought he wouldn't answer. Then he said, "Her name was Ayana. She was fierce and stubborn and never let anyone tell her what she couldn't do, including me." His chest rose and fell beneath Evelyn's cheek. "She would have liked you." "You think?" "She would have said any woman brave enough to jump in a freezing river is worth knowing, and she would have laughed at me for taking 3 months to convince you to come here." His arms tightened. "She died believing in a future for our people, for our child. I owe it to her memory to make that future possible." "Then we'll make it possible," Evelyn said, "together." She fell asleep in his arms, safer than she'd felt in years. They reached the valley 6 weeks later, and it was nothing like Evelyn expected. The land was harsh and beautiful, a high mountain valley surrounded by peaks that would be impassable in winter. A river ran through the center, cold and clear. Scattered across the valley floor were shelters, crude but functional, built by the Apache families who'd arrived before them. But it wasn't just Apache. As they descended into the valley, Evelyn saw other faces. Mexicans. A few whites who looked like trappers or outlaws. Even a small group of freed slaves who'd come west seeking safety. "What is this place?" she asked Cole. "The last refuge, where people come when they've got nowhere else to go." He gestured to the scattered settlements. "The Apache control the valley, but we trade with the others, share resources, stay out of each other's way mostly. It's not exactly paradise." "No, but it's ours. For now." They were met by representatives from the other Apache bands, older warriors, weathered women, a few younger leaders who eyed Cole with a mixture of respect and wariness. There was discussion in Apache too rapid for Evelyn to follow. Gestures toward the mountains, toward the other settlements. Tension in every word. Finally, one of the older men pointed at Evelyn and said something sharp. Cole's response was sharper. The old man's eyes narrowed, but he nodded curtly and walked away. "What was that about?" Evelyn asked. "He wanted to know why I brought a white woman. I told him that's not his concern." Cole helped her down from her horse. "There's going to be tension. Some of the bands here have lost even more than we have. They won't trust you easily." Story of my life. They were given space at the eastern edge of the valley to make camp. The families immediately set about building more permanent shelters. Not the temporary structures they'd been using for years, but actual homes with walls and roofs. Evelyn worked alongside the other women, hauling stones and cutting timber, her body protesting every movement. By nightfall, they had the basic frame of a larger shelter for Cole. As the leader, he needed space to meet with warriors and make decisions. But when darkness fell and people retreated to their own shelters, Cole came to where Evelyn sat by a small fire. "Come with me." He led her to his shelter. Inside, it was sparse. Bedrolls, weapons, supplies. Nothing personal. Nothing that said someone lived here instead of just existing. Cole seemed to read her thoughts. "I never saw the point in making a place feel permanent. We always had to leave. And now? Now maybe we can stay long enough to call it home." He pulled her close. "Maybe we can build something real." That night they made love for the first time. It was awkward and clumsy and nothing like the romance stories Evelyn had read as a girl. Cole was careful with her, almost too careful, until she told him she wouldn't break. Then it was raw and desperate and real, two people who'd survived too much finding comfort in each other. Afterward, lying tangled in blankets, Evelyn traced the scars on Cole's chest. "Where'd you get this one?" "Army bullet, 4 years ago." "This one?" "Knife fight with a Comanche raider. We made peace after." "And this?" She touched a long scar across his ribs. "That was Ayanna. She threw a plate at me during an argument. She had good aim." Evelyn laughed. "What were you arguing about?" "Whether I was being too reckless leading raids." She was right, obviously. His expression grew distant. "She was usually right." "I'm not trying to replace her," Evelyn said quietly. "I know. You couldn't if you tried. You're nothing like her." He brushed hair from Evelyn's face. "You're softer in some ways, harder in others. You've survived different battles, different pain." He kissed her forehead. "But you're both the strongest women I've ever known." Evelyn's eyes burned. She'd spent her whole life being told she was weak, incapable, not enough. And here was this warrior telling her she was strong, seeing strength where everyone else saw failure. "I love you," she said. The words came out before she could stop them. Cole went very still. Then he pulled her on top of him, his hands spanning her waist, his eyes fierce. "Say that again." "I love you. I know it's fast and probably stupid and—" He kissed her quiet. When he pulled back, his voice was rough. "I love you too. I've loved you since I watched you stand on that ravine edge and choose to live. Since I saw you fix that fence in the freezing cold when you could barely stand. Since you jumped in that river without hesitation." He held her face between his hands. "I love you, Evelyn Harper. All of you. Every inch. Every pound. Every stubborn, brave, impossible piece of you." She kissed him again, and they made love slower this time. Gentler. Learning each other's bodies without urgency. When Evelyn caught sight of her reflection in the water basin, her soft stomach, her heavy thighs, her stretch-marked skin, Cole noticed her hesitation. Don't, he said. Don't what?
Don't look at yourself like that. Like you're something to apologize for. He ran his hands over her hips, her waist, her stomach. This body survived starvation and hard labor and kept going. This body jumped in a freezing river and saved a child. This body is strong and beautiful and mine. Cole, mine, Evelyn. And I don't share my things with people who don't deserve them. So if I say you're beautiful, you're beautiful. Understand? She nodded, not trusting her voice. He pulled her back down beside him and held her until they both fell asleep. The next 3 months passed in a blur of hard work and tentative hope. The valley settlement grew as more Apache families arrived, along with other refugees seeking safety. A trading post was established. Crude fields were planted. Children started playing together regardless of whether they spoke Apache, Spanish, or English. Evelyn and Cole's relationship was no secret. Some people accepted it. Others whispered that Cole had gone soft, choosing a white woman over his own people. Naya was particularly vocal in her disapproval, though she kept her distance after Cole made it clear that disrespecting Evelyn meant disrespecting him. But the majority of the camp seemed more interested in survival than romance. There was too much work to do, too many mouths to feed, too many potential threats on the horizon. Evelyn threw herself into making herself indispensable. She helped the women with food preparation and childcare, learned to treat injuries with herbs and stitching, started teaching some of the children basic reading and writing in the evenings, using charcoal and flat stones for slates. Cole was impressed. "Where'd you learn all this?" "I didn't. I'm making it up as I go." Evelyn wiped soot from her hands. "But people need teachers, so I'll be one until someone better comes along. You're better than you think." "I'm adequate. There's a difference." Winter arrived hard and fast. The valley was colder than the desert had been, and people weren't prepared. Illnesses swept through the camps, fevers, coughing sickness, infections that wouldn't heal. The medicine woman did what she could, but supplies were limited. Evelyn worked herself to exhaustion nursing the sick. She sat with fevered children while their mothers slept, changed bandages, forced water into people too weak to drink, lost more patients than she saved, but kept trying anyway. One morning in late December, she woke up and couldn't get out of bed. Her body just wouldn't move. Cole found her there, staring at the shelter ceiling, tears running down her face. "Evelyn, what's wrong?" I can't do this anymore." Her voice was flat. "I'm tired. I'm so tired." He gathered her into his arms. "Then rest. People will survive one day without you. Rest, Evelyn. That's not weakness. That's being human." She slept for 18 hours straight. When she woke, Nady was sitting beside her with a bowl of soup. "You are a stupid woman," Nady said without preamble. "Working yourself to death for what? To prove you belong? You already belong. Stop trying so hard." "I don't know how to stop." "Then learn, because dead helpers help no one." Nady thrust the soup at her. "Eat, then sleep more, then maybe be less stupid." Evelyn ate, slept, woke to find Cole had canceled all her commitments for the next 3 days. She tried to argue, but he was immovable. "You want to help people? Stay healthy. Stay alive. That's how you help." It was during this forced rest that Evelyn realized her monthly bleeding hadn't come. She counted back, 6 weeks, 7, 8. No, that wasn't possible. She was too old, too heavy. The doctor in Missouri had told her years ago she'd probably never conceive, and she and Thomas had tried for years with no success, but her breasts were tender. She felt nauseous every morning, and there was a fullness in her belly that hadn't been there before. She told Nady first. The older woman examined her with experienced hands, then sat back with a grunt. "You are pregnant." The words hit like a physical blow. "That's not... I can't be... Your body says otherwise." Nady's expression was unreadable. "Does Cole know?" "No, I'm not sure. The doctor said... Doctors say many things." "Your body knows better." Nady stood. "You tell Cole, soon. This is not secret you can keep." Evelyn spent the rest of the day in a daze. Pregnant. She was pregnant at 34 in the middle of an Apache refugee camp in a harsh mountain valley with winter closing in.
It was absurd, impossible, terrifying. And somehow underneath all that fear there was a tiny spark of joy. She told Cole that night. He'd been discussing security with Kuruk and came back to their shelter exhausted. Evelyn waited until he'd eaten, then said simply, "I'm pregnant." Cole froze, a piece of dried meat halfway to his mouth. "What?" "I'm pregnant. About 2 months, Nady thinks." He set down his food very carefully. "Are you certain?" "As certain as I can be without a doctor, which we don't have." Evelyn's hands twisted in her lap. "I know this isn't... We didn't plan." Cole pulled her into his arms so fast she lost her breath. "A baby. We're having a baby. You're not angry?" "Angry?" He pulled back to look at her face. "Evelyn, I thought I'd never have a child after Ayanna died. Thought that part of my life was over. And now you're telling me..." His voice cracked. "How could I be angry?" Relief flooded through her. "So you're happy?" "I'm terrified. This valley isn't safe. We barely have enough food. The army could find us at any time, and I have no idea how to be a father." He kissed her hard. "But yes, I'm happy. I'm so happy I can barely breathe." They held each other, both shaking with fear and joy, and the weight of responsibility that came with creating a new life in the middle of chaos. But the joy was short-lived. 2 weeks later, Cole left on a hunting expedition with a group of warriors. They'd be gone 3 days, maybe 4, tracking elk in the high country. Evelyn kissed him goodbye and tried not to think about all the things that could go wrong. He was gone less than 6 hours when the outlaws came. There were 5 of them, rough men riding hard into the valley, ignoring the trading post, heading straight for the Apache camps. Evelyn was gathering firewood when she heard the shots. She dropped the wood and ran toward the sound. The outlaws had cornered 3 Apache women near the river. One was already on the ground, bleeding from a head wound. The others were fighting, but they were outmatched and the men were laughing. Evelyn saw red. She grabbed the nearest weapon, a heavy branch, and ran at them. One of the men turned, saw her coming, and his eyes widened. "What the hell?" She swung the branch like a club. It connected with his skull with a satisfying crack. He went down. The other men turned, reaching for their guns. Evelyn knew she was about to die, but she'd be damned if she died quietly. Then Kuruk was there, appearing from nowhere with 3 other warriors. The fight was brief and brutal. 2 outlaws died. 1 ran. The other 2 were subdued and dragged to the center of camp for judgment. Evelyn knelt beside the injured women, checking their wounds. The one who'd been bleeding from her head was unconscious, but breathing. The others were shaken, but unharmed. "You saved us," one of them said in broken English. "You hit that man, stopped them." "Are you okay? Did they..." "They did not have time. Because of you." Kuruk hauled Evelyn to her feet. "You are bleeding." She looked down. There was blood on her dress. For a moment she thought it was from the injured woman. Then she felt the wetness between her legs and her heart stopped. "No, no, no, no!" Nady was there suddenly, supporting her weight. "Get her to shelter. Now!" The next hours were a nightmare. The cramping started, sharp, vicious pains that doubled her over. The bleeding increased. Nady worked with grim efficiency, doing everything she could, but they both knew what was happening. Evelyn was losing the baby. She screamed. She cried. She begged powers she didn't believe in to stop this, to save this one small life that had barely begun. But the cramping continued. The bleeding wouldn't stop. And finally, mercifully, Nady gave her something that made the world fade away. When Evelyn woke, Cole was there. His face was white. His hands were shaking. He looked like he'd aged 10 years. "You're alive," he said. It sounded like a prayer. "The baby is gone. I know." He pressed his face to her hand. "I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry I wasn't here. You couldn't have stopped it. I could have protected you, could have made sure those men never got close." His voice was ragged. "I failed you, failed our child." "Cole, no, this isn't..." The grief hit her then, overwhelming and complete. She sobbed, and Cole held her through it, both of them crying for the future they'd almost had. The outlaws were executed the next day. Cole did it himself, quick and merciless. Evelyn didn't watch. She stayed in their shelter, her body aching and empty, trying to process the loss. Nady came to check on her. The bleeding has stopped. You will heal. Will I be able to? Evelyn's voice broke. Can I have another child? I do not know. Maybe. Maybe not. Nady's expression was unusually gentle. But you are alive. That is what matters now. Is it? Because I don't feel alive. I feel... Evelyn pressed her hands to her hollow stomach. I feel empty. You are grieving. That is normal. That is right. Nady sat beside her. Let yourself grieve. Then, when you are ready, you live again. Cole barely left her side for the next week. He brought her food she couldn't eat, held her when she cried, sat in silence when words were impossible. Other people came to offer condolences, Kuruk, Dakota, even some of the women who'd never warmed to her. The woman whose baby Evelyn had saved from the river brought her a blanket she'd woven herself. For next time, she said quietly, when you're ready. The grief was unlike anything Evelyn had experienced. Worse than losing Thomas, because Thomas had lived a full life. This child had never drawn breath, had never had a chance, and Evelyn couldn't stop thinking about all the things that would never be. First steps, first words, the weight of a baby in her arms. But slowly, painfully, she began to heal. Her body recovered faster than her heart, but eventually she could walk without pain, could eat without nausea, could make it through a day without crying. One evening, a month after the attack, she and Cole sat outside their shelter, watching the sun set over the valley. The settlement had grown quieter, more cautious. The attack had reminded everyone that safety was an illusion. We can't stay here, Cole said quietly. What do you mean? This valley, it's not safe. Today it's outlaws. Tomorrow it's the army. Next week it's something else. He looked at her. We need to find somewhere truly remote, somewhere we can build walls and defend properly, somewhere we can actually have a future. Where would we go? I don't know yet, but I've been talking to scouts from the Comanche band. They say there's country further north in the deep mountains, harsh, isolated, but defensible. He took her hand. We could build something there, something real, something permanent. Just us? Anyone who wants to come. I'm done trying to hold together a coalition that doesn't want to be held together. I'm done compromising with people who see you as the enemy. I'm done living in places that kill the people I love. His jaw was set. I want to build a life with you, Evelyn, a real life where we can raise children without fear, where we don't have to apologize for existing, where we belong because we built it ourselves. Evelyn thought about it, about leaving the valley and everyone in it, about starting over in an even more remote location, about building something from nothing with just Cole and whoever was brave or desperate enough to follow. It should have terrified her. A year ago, it would have. But now? Now it sounded like exactly what she needed. When do we leave? Cole looked at her in surprise. You're saying yes, just like that? You said it yourself, this place isn't safe. And I'm tired of being afraid, tired of losing things I love. If we're going to build a future, let's actually build it. Somewhere we choose, somewhere we control. She squeezed his hand. Together. He kissed her, deep and fierce. I don't deserve you. We've had this conversation. You're still wrong. She pulled back to look at him. So when do we leave? Spring. As soon as the pass is clear, we'll need time to prepare, gather supplies, see who wants to come with us. He brushed her hair back. Are you sure about this? I've never been sure about anything in my life, but I'm willing to try. She leaned against him. Besides, I've gotten pretty good at impossible things, like surviving in an Apache camp, like falling for a stubborn warrior who watched me for 3 months before saying hello, like loving someone enough to follow them into the unknown. Cole held her close as the sun disappeared behind the mountains, painting the sky in shades of red and gold. Around them, the valley settled into evening routines. Fires were lit. Children were called home. Life continued, fragile and beautiful and temporary. But tomorrow they would start planning, start preparing, start building toward a future that existed only in hope and determination. And for the first time since losing the baby, Evelyn felt something other than grief. She felt purpose. She felt possibility. She felt alive. The winter passed slowly, each day a test of endurance. Evelyn threw herself into preparations for the spring journey, needing the work to keep the grief at bay. She inventoried supplies with Nady, learned to preserve meat from Kuruk's wife, and spent her evenings teaching a growing number of children their letters by firelight. Cole worked twice as hard, meeting with families who might join them, scouting routes north, negotiating for supplies they'd need. Some nights he came back to their shelter so exhausted he could barely speak. Evelyn would feed him, tend his blistered feet, and hold him while he slept. In February, she realized her monthly bleeding still hadn't returned. At first, she thought it was the miscarriage. Nady had warned her body might take months to recover, but then came the nausea again, the tender breasts, the exhaustion that felt different from simple hard work. She waited 2 more weeks before telling anyone, terrified of jinxing it, terrified of losing another child, terrified of hoping. Finally, Nady cornered her while they were sorting dried beans. "You are pregnant again." Evelyn's hand stilled. "How did you—" "I have eyes. I have seen pregnant women before." Nady's expression was stern. "You must be careful this time. No jumping in rivers, no fighting outlaws, no working yourself to death. I can't just— People need you alive and healthy more than they need you exhausted and bleeding." Nady gripped her wrist. "You want this baby? Then you rest. You eat. You let others do the heavy work. Understood?" Evelyn nodded, her throat tight. "I'm scared, Nady. What if I lose this one too?" "Then you lose it. But you do not lose it because you were stupid. You lose it because some things are not in our control." Nady's voice softened. "But you give this baby the best chance. That is all you can do." Telling Cole was harder. She waited until after dinner, until he'd checked the perimeter guards and settled beside her with his evening tea. Then she said, without preamble, "I'm pregnant again." Cole's cup hit the floor, tea splashing across the packed earth. "What?" "About 6 weeks, I think. Maybe 7. She couldn't look at him. "I know it's too soon. I know after what happened—" He pulled her into his arms so hard she gasped. "A baby. Another chance. We might lose this one, too. We might, but we might not." He pulled back to look at her face, his hands framing her cheeks. "Either way, we're in this together. Understood?" "I'm scared." "So am I, but being scared together is better than being scared alone." He kissed her forehead. "We'll be careful this time. No risks, no heroics, just you, me, and keeping you both safe until this baby decides to join us." Word spread through camp quickly. Most people were cautiously happy. Some were skeptical. She'd lost the first pregnancy so early. Why would this one be different? A few, including Naya, were openly hostile about bringing another mixed-blood child into a world that would reject it. But Evelyn had stopped caring what Naya thought. The preparations for the spring journey took on new urgency. Cole refused to let Evelyn travel pregnant unless they had proper supplies and support. He negotiated with the valley's traders, bartering winter furs for medicine, food stores, and a small wagon that could carry supplies and, if necessary, a woman too pregnant to ride. By the time the mountain passes cleared in April, they had 17 families committed to the journey north. Not everyone was Apache. 3 Mexican families joined them, along with 2 white trappers, a freed slave and his wife, and an old Comanche warrior who'd lost his entire band to disease. "We're not a tribe anymore," Karuk observed, watching the mixed group prepare to leave. "We're something else." "We're survivors," Cole said. "That's tribe enough." They left the valley on a clear morning, the sun just cresting the eastern peaks. Evelyn rode in the wagon for the first few hours, her pregnant belly already showing at 4 months. But by afternoon she was restless and convinced Cole to let her ride the gentle mare they'd acquired for her. "If you feel tired," Cole started, "I'll get back in the wagon. I know. You've told me 17 times today. I'll tell you 17 more if it keeps you and the baby safe." The journey north was nothing like their flight from the army. They moved slowly, carefully, hunting as they went and camping early each night. The children ran ahead, exploring, while their parents kept watchful eyes on the horizon. They saw army patrols twice, but managed to avoid them both times by taking longer routes through rougher terrain. 3 weeks into the journey, they found it. The valley Cole's scouts had described was smaller than the one they'd left, tucked between mountains so steep they looked like walls. A river ran through it, fed by snowmelt, and there was evidence of old structures. Someone had lived here before, though whether Apache or Spanish or some other group was impossible to say. "This is it?" Evelyn asked, studying the narrow entrance. "This is it. Defensible, water, game in the mountains. far enough from settlements that we shouldn't be bothered. Cole helped her down from her horse. What do you think? Evelyn walked into the valley, feeling the afternoon sun on her face. It was beautiful in a harsh way. No gentle prettiness, but strength and survival, like everything else in her life now. I think we can make it work. They spent the first month just establishing basic shelter and security. The men built a barrier across the narrow valley entrance, not a wall, but enough of an obstacle to slow anyone trying to force their way in. The women planted fast-growing vegetables and established cooking areas. The children helped gather firewood and tend the animals. Evelyn, forbidden from heavy labor by both Cole and Nady, focused on planning. She sketched out where structures should go for maximum efficiency and safety, where gardens could be planted, where animals could graze. She'd never done anything like this before, but necessity was a hell of a teacher. One evening, Dakota found her sitting outside her shelter, one hand on her growing belly, the other holding a piece of charcoal and a flat piece of bark covered in rough drawings. "What are you making?" he asked. "A school, or the idea of one." She showed him the drawing, a simple structure with benches and a space for teaching. The children need education. They need to learn to read and write and do numbers. Otherwise, they'll be at the mercy of anyone who can cheat them. "Will you teach them?" "If they'll learn from me. I know some people still—" She gestured vaguely. "I know I'm not everyone's first choice. You saved my life during the buffalo hunt," Dakota said quietly. "When that bull charged and you helped turn the herd, you did not have to do that. You could have run." He sat beside her. "I think you are a good teacher because you understand what it is like to need someone to believe in you." Evelyn's eyes burned. "Thank you. Besides, who else will do it? Karuk? He can barely write his own name." Dakota grinned. "At least you know all your letters." The school became Evelyn's project. With help from some of the men, including the 2 white trappers who knew carpentry, they built a simple structure with a roof and 3 walls. The 4th wall they left open to the valley, so children could see the world they were learning to navigate. Evelyn started classes in June with 8 students. By July, she had 15. They learned letters and numbers, but also history, both Apache history and the wider world. She taught them about treaties and laws, about how to read contracts so they couldn't be cheated, about geography and navigation and everything else she could remember from her own scattered education. Some parents were suspicious at first. Why did their children need white man's learning? But Evelyn was patient. She showed them that knowledge was protection, that understanding how the world worked gave their children power that couldn't be taken away. Slowly, the suspicion turned to grudging acceptance, then to appreciation, then to something that looked almost like respect. In August, Evelyn went into labor. It started in the middle of the night, a cramping that felt different from the previous pregnancy. Deeper, more insistent. She woke Cole, who immediately panicked in the way of all first-time fathers. "Should I get Nady? Should I boil water? What do I—" "Get Nady, and stop shouting or you'll wake the entire settlement." Nady arrived calm and prepared, bringing the medicine woman from the Comanche family and 2 other women who'd birthed multiple children. They shooed Cole out and got to work. The labor lasted 14 hours. Evelyn screamed and cursed and swore she'd never do this again. She called Cole every name she could think of for getting her pregnant. She begged for it to be over. And then, as the sun was setting, her son was born. He came out squalling, red-faced and furious at the world. Nady cleaned him efficiently and placed him on Evelyn's chest. He was tiny and perfect and absolutely real. "A boy," Nady said. "Healthy. Strong lungs." Evelyn couldn't speak. She could only stare at this impossible creature she'd created, this life that had survived against all odds, this future she'd thought was lost forever. Cole was allowed back in. He knelt beside the bed, staring at his son with an expression of wonder and terror. "He's so small. He'll grow." Evelyn guided Cole's hand to the baby's head. "Say hello to your father." "Hello," Cole whispered. "I'm going to do everything in my power to keep you safe, to give you a better world than the one I was born into, to make sure you never have to apologize for who you are or where you come from." His voice cracked. "I promise." They named him Caleb Redriver, Caleb for new beginnings. redriver for the father who'd already sacrificed everything to give him a chance at life. The settlement celebrated the birth with a feast, small but genuine. People brought what food they could spare. The children sang songs in 3 different languages. Someone produced a fiddle and played music while others danced. Evelyn watched from her shelter, Caleb asleep in her arms, and felt something she hadn't felt in years. Contentment. Not happiness exactly, there was still too much uncertainty, too much danger. But contentment. The sense that she was exactly where she was supposed to be. Naya appeared in the doorway, her expression unreadable. For a moment, Evelyn thought she'd come to cause trouble. Then Naya stepped inside and looked down at the sleeping baby. "He is beautiful," she said quietly. "Thank you. I was wrong about you." Naya didn't look at Evelyn as she spoke. "I thought you were weak, thought Cole was foolish for bringing you here, thought you would destroy everything. And now? Now I think you are the strongest person here, because you had every reason to give up and you never did, because you lost everything and still found ways to build something new, because you look at this baby and see hope instead of burden." Naya finally met Evelyn's eyes. "I'm sorry for how I treated you, for the things I said." Evelyn shifted Caleb in her arms. "You lost your brother, your family. You had every right to be angry, but not at you. You are not the army, not the government, not the settlers who took our land." Naya's voice was rough. "You are just a woman trying to survive, like all of us." "I forgive you," Evelyn said. Because what else was there to say? They'd both suffered, both survived, both ended up here in this impossible settlement trying to build impossible futures. Naya nodded once and left. But the next day, she brought a small blanket she'd woven, Apache patterns mixed with designs Evelyn didn't recognize, Mexican, maybe, or Comanche. A blending of worlds. "For Caleb," Naya said. "So he remembers he comes from many places, all of them strong." The first year with Caleb was exhausting and joyful in equal measure. Evelyn learned to teach with the baby strapped to her back. Cole learned to bounce a crying infant while discussing settlement security with Kuruk. The entire community seemed to take ownership of the baby. Different families volunteered to watch him, teach him, protect him. He was their future. Their proof that new life could grow in hard ground. But trouble was never far away. In Caleb's 8th month, a merchant caravan stumbled across their valley. The traders were heading to Santa Fe and had gotten lost in the mountains. When they saw the settlement, they were wary but desperate for water and supplies. Cole met with them cautiously. "What do you need?" "Water. Food if you can spare it. We'll trade fairly." "And what are you trading?" The lead merchant gestured to his wagons. "Tools, fabric, medicine, seeds, we've got everything." They negotiated carefully. The settlement traded furs and dried meat for medicine and tools they desperately needed. It should have been a simple transaction, but one of the younger merchants kept staring at Evelyn as she helped inventory supplies, Caleb on her hip. "You're white," he said finally. "I'm aware." "Why are you living with savages?" Cole appeared beside her so fast the merchant stumbled backward. "Call my people savages again and we'll see how savage I can be." The merchant raised his hands. "No offense meant, it's unusual. White woman, Indian baby, living in the middle of nowhere." "My son is an Indian. He's not white. He's both." Evelyn's voice was steel. "And where I live and who I live with isn't your concern. Are we trading or not?" They finished the transaction in tense silence. The merchants left the next morning, promising to keep the settlement's location to themselves. Cole didn't believe them. They'll talk, in Santa Fe or wherever they end up, about the mixed settlement in the mountains, about the white woman with the Indian baby. He watched the caravan disappear into the distance. "We'll have visitors, army, maybe, or settlers looking to cause trouble. Then we'll deal with them when they come." "It's not that simple, Evelyn. We're vulnerable here. Not enough warriors to fight off a real attack. Not enough resources to survive a siege." Cole's jaw was tight. "I brought you here to be safe, but maybe nowhere is safe." "Maybe not, but we're safer together than apart. And we're safer here than in some reservation where they'd take Caleb away to teach him to hate who he is." She took Cole's hand. "We made the right choice. Don't doubt that now." The visitors started arriving the following spring. First came another Apache band, smaller, more desperate than Cole's group had been. They were fleeing a massacre in Mexico. Cole accepted them without hesitation. Then came a group of Chinese railroad workers who'd escaped brutal conditions further east. Then a family of freed slaves from Texas. Then a white widow with 3 children running from an abusive brother-in-law. Each time the settlement had to decide: accept them or turn them away, risk overcrowding and depleting resources, or hold to the principle that anyone genuinely seeking refuge deserved a chance. They always chose to accept. The settlement grew, structures multiplied, gardens expanded. The school doubled in size, then tripled. Evelyn found herself teaching 30 children from a dozen different backgrounds, all learning together. Some of the older settlers grumbled. This wasn't what they'd signed up for. This was supposed to be an Apache settlement. Now it was something else entirely. "What should we call it?" Dakota asked one evening. He was 17 now, tall and serious, helping Cole with security and training younger warriors. "We're not Apache, not Mexican, not white, not anything specific. We're survivors," Kuruk said. "That's specific enough. But we need a name, for when travelers ask, for when we talk about ourselves." They debated for weeks. Some wanted an Apache name, others thought that excluded too many people. Someone suggested naming it after the valley. Another person suggested naming it after Cole. Finally, Evelyn spoke up during a community meeting. "What if we don't name it after who we were? What if we name it after what we're trying to build?" "Which is what?" Cole asked. "A place where people are judged by their character instead of their appearance. Where children can grow up without apologizing for existing. Where we protect each other because we're all we've got." She looked around at the gathered faces. Apache, Mexican, white, black, Chinese, all of them weathered by hardship and strengthened by survival. A place of refuge, a place of hope, a place that shouldn't exist but does anyway because we're too stubborn to give up. "Hope Valley," Dakota said quietly. "That's what we should call it." The name stuck. Hope Valley. It was probably too optimistic, too naive, but it was theirs. Over the next 3 years, the settlement grew into something resembling a real town. They built a trading post that did business with merchant caravans, established a council to make community decisions instead of relying entirely on Cole's leadership, created rules about water rights and grazing land and dispute resolution. It wasn't perfect. There were arguments, cultural clashes, moments when it seemed like the whole thing would fracture. But they kept working at it, kept choosing community over division. Evelyn gave birth to 2 more children, a daughter named Sarah and another son named Thomas after her first husband. Caleb grew into a confident child who spoke 3 languages and could navigate between different cultural groups with ease. He learned Apache traditions from his father, farming from the Mexican families, carpentry from the white trappers, and reading from his mother. The school became the heart of the settlement. It was where children learned to see past differences, where they discovered that an Apache warrior and a Chinese railroad worker could both tell stories of survival and loss, where they understood that strength came in many forms. Evelyn watched her students grow and marry and have children of their own. Watched Hope Valley slowly transform from a desperate collection of refugees into something that looked like an actual community. One afternoon, when Caleb was 7, he came home from playing with friends and asked, "Mama, why do I look different from everyone?" Evelyn set down the bread she was kneading. "What do you mean?" "My skin isn't as dark as Papa's, but it's darker than yours, and my hair is different from the Mexican kids, and my eyes are different from—" He gestured helplessly. "I don't look like anyone." Evelyn knelt to his level. "Come here." She led him outside where they could see the whole valley. The settlement sprawled below them. Adobe structures mixed with wooden cabins mixed with traditional Apache shelters. Children of every shade playing together. Adults working side by side regardless of where they'd come from. "What do you see?" she asked. "Everyone? And do any of them look exactly alike?" Caleb considered. "No, everyone looks different." "That's right. Your friend Miguel's skin is darker than yours, but it's lighter than Dakota's, and Dakota's is darker than Sarah Chen's, and none of it matters because we're all part of Hope Valley." She turned him to face her. "You don't look like one thing, Caleb. You look like all of us. You're Apache and white and everything that matters about this place. You're proof that different worlds can come together and create something beautiful. Some kids say I'm half-breed, that I don't belong anywhere. Evelyn's hands tightened on his shoulders. Those kids are wrong. You belong everywhere. You're not half of anything. You're whole, complete, perfect exactly as you are. She pulled him close. And anyone who can't see that isn't worth your time. That night, she told Cole about the conversation. He was quiet for a long time, staring at their sleeping children. He's going to face that his whole life, Cole said finally. Too Apache for white society. Too white for Apache society. Never quite fitting anywhere. Or he'll create his own place, like we did. Evelyn took his hand. We can't protect him from everything, but we can teach him that not fitting in isn't a weakness. It's a different kind of strength. How did you get so wise? I'm not wise. I'm just tired of letting the world tell me who I'm supposed to be. She leaned against him. I spent my whole life being told I was too fat, too weak, too much of a burden, and I believed it until I met a stubborn warrior who saw something different. Cole pulled her closer. I didn't make you strong. You already were. I just gave you a reason to stop hiding it. By the time Evelyn turned 42, Hope Valley had a population of over 200. The school had 3 teachers. The trading post did regular business with merchant caravans from 3 different territories. They'd survived 2 hard winters, 1 drought, and countless smaller crises. The army had found them twice. Both times Cole had negotiated carefully, showing them that Hope Valley was peaceful and cooperative, that they had nothing to hide, that they were just people trying to live. Both times, the army had left them alone, not because they approved, but because attacking a settlement full of women and children was bad publicity even in 1895. But Evelyn knew their luck wouldn't hold forever. Settlements like theirs were anomalies, threats to the established order. Eventually, someone would decide they needed to be eliminated. The threat came from an unexpected direction. A delegation from Santa Fe arrived in late summer, government officials, religious leaders, and a U.S. Marshal. They wanted to talk about the school. We've heard reports, the lead official said, his nose wrinkling as he looked around the valley, that you're teaching Indian children alongside white children, that you're promoting race mixing and ungodly beliefs. Evelyn stood in front of her school, arms crossed. I'm teaching children to read and write and do arithmetic. I'm not promoting anything except education. Education in service of what? Civilization requires order, separation, each race in its proper place. Then I guess we're not civilized. Evelyn's voice was flat. We're just people trying to survive. And part of survival is making sure our children are educated. The marshal stepped forward. Ma'am, I've got orders to close this school, to remove any white children and place them in proper Christian homes, to evaluate whether this settlement should be allowed to continue operating. On what grounds? Moral corruption. Violation of decency laws, promoting miscegenation. He gestured at Caleb, who was watching from the school entrance. That boy there. He's proof of illegal relations. His very existence is a crime in some territories. Cole appeared beside Evelyn, his hand resting on his knife. Touch my son, and I'll kill you where you stand. The marshal's hand went to his gun. For a moment, everyone froze. Then Kuruk was there, and Dakota, and Nadi, and the Chinese families, and the Mexican families, and the white widow with her 3 children, and the freed slaves, and everyone else who'd built Hope Valley with their own hands. They stood together, a wall of different faces united by one purpose, protecting what they'd built. The official from Santa Fe looked nervous. This is illegal. All of this. You can't just what? Evelyn stepped forward. Can't just survive where you told us we couldn't? Can't just build community where you said it was impossible? Can't just prove that people are more than the boxes you try to put them in? This settlement is an aberration, a mistake. It needs to be corrected. We're not a mistake. We're proof that your rules are wrong. Evelyn's voice rose. You want to close my school? Fine, try. But you'll have to go through every person in this valley. You'll have to explain to your superiors why you massacred peaceful families, why you destroyed a functioning community that wasn't bothering anyone. We're not here to massacre anyone. We're here to restore order. Your order nearly killed me. Evelyn gestured at the settlement. Your order scattered these Apache families, enslaved these black families, worked these Chinese men to death, drove that widow and her children out of Texas. She stepped closer. So forgive us if we don't trust your version of order, We'll keep our chaos, thank you. The standoff lasted hours. The officials threatened. Cole negotiated. The community stood firm. Finally, as the sun was setting, the delegation from Santa Fe climbed back on their horses. "This isn't over," the marshal said. "We'll be back with more men, real authority." "Then we'll be here," Cole replied, waiting. They watched the officials ride away. Everyone knew this was just a delay. The government would return, maybe with soldiers, maybe with lawyers, maybe with some new excuse to tear apart what they'd built. That night, the community gathered for an emergency meeting. Some people wanted to scatter again, disappear before the army came. Others wanted to stay and fight. The debate grew heated. Finally, Evelyn stood up. She rarely spoke at community meetings, preferring to let others make decisions. But this time was different. "I came here with nothing," she said. "A widow alone on a failing ranch, fat, useless, unwanted. Everyone said I'd die within a year. And I would have, if Cole hadn't seen something in me I couldn't see in myself." She looked around at the assembled faces. "Every person here has a similar story. You came here with nothing. You were told you didn't matter, that you should disappear quietly, that the world had no place for you. But we didn't disappear. We built something. We created a place where our children can grow up without apologizing for who they are, where we judge each other by our actions instead of our appearance, where we survive together instead of dying alone." Her voice strengthened. "The government wants to destroy this. Not because we're criminals, not because we're dangerous, but because we're proof that their rules are arbitrary, that their order is built on lies. So yes, they'll come back. They'll threaten us. They'll try to scare us into submission, and maybe they'll succeed. Maybe they'll burn Hope Valley to the ground. But they can't burn what we've built inside ourselves. They can't take away what we've learned about community and survival and refusing to give up. We stay. We fight. Not with guns necessarily, though we'll defend ourselves if we must. But we fight by continuing to exist, by continuing to teach our children, by continuing to prove that people are more than the categories society forces on them. And if they destroy us?" She met Cole's eyes across the room. "Then we rebuild somewhere else, because that's what we do. We're survivors. And survival means never accepting someone else's definition of defeat." The room was silent. Then Dakota stood up. "I stay." Karuk rose. "I stay." One by one, every family stood, even the ones who'd wanted to leave, even the ones who were terrified. They stood together and chose hope over fear. The government did come back. 3 months later, with lawyers and officials and threats of military intervention. But by then, Hope Valley had prepared. They'd documented everything: births, deaths, property claims, education records. They'd established themselves legally as a settlement with proper boundaries and governance. The lawyers found no grounds to shut them down. The officials couldn't prove any actual laws were being broken. The military wasn't interested in attacking peaceful families without clear justification. So Hope Valley survived, not because the government approved, but because they'd built something too real, too documented, too visible to easily erase. Years passed. Caleb grew into a young man who moved between cultures with ease. Sarah became a teacher in her mother's school. Thomas showed aptitude for medicine and studied with the settlement's healers. More children were born, more refugees arrived. The settlement expanded slowly, carefully, always mindful of resources and sustainability. Evelyn's hair went gray. Her body, never slim, grew softer with age. She developed a limp from old injuries. But she kept teaching, kept helping families settle in, kept proving every day that worth wasn't measured in appearance or conformity. One evening, when she was 53, she stood on the ridge overlooking Hope Valley with Cole beside her. His hair was white now, his face deeply lined, but his eyes were still sharp, still watchful. Below them, the settlement glowed with firelight. Children played in the dusty streets. Adults gathered for the evening meal. Somewhere, a fiddle played while people danced. "We did it," Cole said quietly. "Did what?" "Built something permanent, something that'll outlast us." He took her hand. "When I found you on that ranch, I saw a woman who refused to quit. I never imagined we'd end up here. Neither did I." Evelyn leaned against him. "I thought I'd die alone and forgotten. Instead, I'm standing here watching my grandchildren play, watching a community we built from nothing, watching proof that the world can be different if we're stubborn enough to make it so." Do you ever regret leaving? Leaving my ranch, that falling apart cabin and empty land? She laughed. Not for a second. That wasn't a life. It was just existing. This is living. Cole kissed her temple. I love you, Evelyn Harper Redriver. Every stubborn, impossible, beautiful piece of you. I love you too. Even though you're going blind if you think I'm beautiful. I see you perfectly clearly. Have since the first time I watched you fix that fence in the freezing cold. You're the strongest person I've ever known. They stood there as the sun set, watching the world they'd created together. It wasn't perfect. There were still arguments and prejudices and people who couldn't see past their own narrow views. But it was better. It was hope made tangible. And when Evelyn finally died at 68, surrounded by children, grandchildren, and a community that mourned her passing, she died knowing she'd been wrong about herself all those years ago. She hadn't been useless. She hadn't been a burden. She hadn't been too much of anything. She'd been exactly enough. And sometimes that was everything. The settlement of Hope Valley survived her death, thrived even. Caleb took over her school, teaching a new generation to see past differences. Sarah expanded the medical facilities. Thomas documented their history so future generations would know how it all began. And sometimes, on quiet evenings, the elders would tell stories about the fat widow who'd refused to die quietly, who'd jumped in a freezing river to save a stranger's child, who'd built a school with her own hands and taught hundreds of children that their worth wasn't determined by anyone but themselves. They told these stories not because Evelyn had been perfect. She'd been stubborn and difficult and often wrong about herself. She'd made mistakes. She'd carried grief that never fully healed. She'd struggled every day with believing she deserved the love and respect she'd earned. But she'd never quit. She'd never accepted someone else's definition of what she could be or where she belonged. She'd survived when everyone said she wouldn't. She'd built community where everyone said it was impossible. She'd loved fiercely and been loved in return. And in the end, that was the only legacy that mattered. The fat widow nobody wanted had changed the frontier forever. Not through grand gestures or dramatic moments, but through the simple, stubborn act of refusing to disappear. Of insisting that she, and everyone like her, deserved to exist, to take up space, to build futures on their own terms. Hope Valley stood as proof that she'd been right all along.